Back in the snow again. How long and how much? Stay with Channel 10.
You are watching continuing coverage of the L.A. earthquake. 6.6 is what it measured on the Richter scale this morning at 4:31 Pacific time. That's a live picture that you see right now from KCBS television, part of one of the freeways there that has just collapsed and buckled. Thus far, 5 is the number of confirmed deaths, but the death toll is beginning to rise as we are getting a report now from the Associated Press that the fire chief in Northridge, California, which is very close to the epicenter of this quake, confirms that 5 people died in the collapse of an apartment building there. That's 5 people dead in Northridge, California, died in the collapse of an apartment building there. And from what we have been able to determine thus far, those are unrelated to the other deaths that have been reported. A number of people have suffered heart attacks as a result of the shock and the strain and the horror of what they experienced earlier this morning. This earthquake, when it hit at 4:31 Pacific time, was longer in duration than folks in Los Angeles are accustomed to. Those folks that we have talked to on the scene there say they felt like it was rumbling anywhere from 30 seconds to 45 seconds to as long as a minute. We've got a live picture now from KCBS, our owned and operated station out in L.A. You can see a fire rescue team, looks to be on the roof of a building there. It looks like it could have been a parking garage. We, of course, don't know the story on the ground there. We're just looking at a live shot from a helicopter. That's Northridge again. That, of course, is right close to the place where we know to be the epicenter of this quake. And they look to have jackhammers and other rescue equipment there trying to dig through the rubble of this building that has completely collapsed. One of the things that we know about or have been figuring out as the morning has gone along, as we are joined by Dr. Chris Schultz, who is a seismologist from Columbia University. One of the things that you mentioned early on when we were talking about what may have happened out there is that there seemed to be some upper thrust, and just looking at this damage, that seems to rule through for what you said a couple of hours ago. What looks to have happened here?
Well, the earthquake was probably directly underneath this structure, and what happened to this structure is just got a sudden vertical acceleration. So it just was pushed up very rapidly from below and just collapsed in compression, if you like.
Folks have been tuning in and out and probably changing channels throughout the morning to get a look at what's going on in Los Angeles. Talk to us a little bit again and recap, if you will, where this happened, the epicenter, and what fault line it might be occurring on.
Well, there's the whole of the San Fernando Valley. In fact, most of the LA basin has almost horizontal faults just below it, and these faults aren't really evident at the surface. In fact, many of them aren't even named, but those faults allow the movement of the upper part of the crust to move north, and generally it's response to part of the whole San Andreas system. But these are very much secondary structures. But nonetheless, they can have earthquakes on these almost horizontal faults because they're so close to the populated area. It can cause quite a lot of damage.
6.6 is what this registered on the Richter scale, and this is somewhat related to an earthquake how many years ago?
Well, there was an earthquake in 1971, the San Fernando earthquake, that occurred on a similar fault system, but further to the north. In fact, I've made a diagram here, and
we can take a look.
Actually show that. What this diagram shows
is down a little bit. There you go.
This is a sort of a cross-section across the San Fernando Valley. So this is the Santa Monica Hills and the San Gabriel Mountains to the north.
Right.
And underneath there's a fault at about 5 to 8 kilometers depth. And this fault, generally, the top is moving to the north relative to underneath. The earthquake occurred right here and propagated along this fault. From the size of the earthquake, it probably broke about 20 kilometers of this fault.
My goodness.
Slipping maybe as much as a meter or so.
So we're talking about 12 miles this way, and this is a fault that goes down, what, about 4.5 miles down
something like
the
4.5 miles just below the surface, and it probably broke about 12 miles of that, slipping maybe 3 or 4 feet, and it all occurred in something like 5 to 6 seconds. So that's the kind of sudden shock that occurs. It propagates then the waves directly up.
They go up.
Yes.
Yeah. And the evidence that we've seen just in that structure a minute ago, and then on the freeways up on the 10, where you can just see the support structure for the freeway is standing and everything around it just fall into the ground. And
the other thing about this basin is that you have a big basin full of sediments. So these waves kind of reverberate back and forth through this sediment. So they bounce against the mountains and come back again several times. That's why it felt like it lasted so long.
It's because it's just bouncing, sort of reverberating back and forth through all of that.
It's like being in a big bowl of Jell-O, and you shake it, and it keeps shaking back and forth, even though the earthquake itself only occurred in maybe 6, 7, 8 seconds.
Now, we should reiterate that the diagram you just showed us is the earthquake from 1970.
No, this is today's earthquake.
So this is your sort of vision of what you think occurred today.
This is my reconstruction from the information we have as to what happened today.
Yeah.
The 1971 earthquake occurred on a similar fault, but it was up underneath the San Gabriel Mountains. So in some sense, it was a little bit off to the side.
Yeah.
So we saw a little bit less damage in that earthquake.
All right, we want to go back live to this KCBS television picture in Reseda. What occurred at this building is it's a apartment building that's a couple of stories high, like 3 stories high, and as best you can imagine, think of one story of it disappearing. 2 stories collapsed on the bottom floor. And so there are rescue crews there. There are people trying to determine if there are folks still alive in there. If we can get the audio on, well, let's go ahead and listen in and see what the situation is there.
So even the official rescuers are taking it very slow.
Is there a triage area set up? Is there nearby?
I haven't seen any triage there. There are a number of ambulances standing by, and probably about 10 fire companies here.
Linda Morgan.
And they're trying to, take them as quickly as possible to local hospitals, which hospitals are still open or accepting victims at this point.
Looks like slow, tedious, agonizing work there, Linda. As you say, they've gotten maybe a couple of dozen people out so far. 5 confirmed fatalities at that apartment complex in Reseda. People are trying to call in and out of Los Angeles, trying to call in from all over the country, and obviously people here trying to call their loved ones out. Telephone service is out in many areas. On the telephone right now with us, we have Judy Pearson from Pac Bell. Judy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Peterson, I'm sorry. What can you tell us? What should people be doing? Should we all just stay off the phone?
As much as possible, we are asking people in Southern California to stay off the phones so that the network can handle the numbers of emergency calls that need to be made in a situation like this. We're also limiting calls into Southern California from other parts of the state and the country, and that does allow the network to process the emergency calls that I discussed. As far as outages go, we have an outage in Culver City. About 55,000 lines are down there. Also in the Antelope Valley area, Saugus and Palmdale, those communities are what we call isolated, which means they can call their immediate local area, but they cannot call out and no one can call in. So that's pretty much the synopsis at this point.
What would you advise somebody if they had relatives, say they had a relative in another part of the country who has a heart condition and they knew that person would turn on the television in Omaha and see this terrible tragedy that's happened here. How should they get in touch with them, or should they?
What we suggest is that people in the earthquake area try to go ahead and reach relatives in other parts of the country. Let them know that they're okay, and then ask that person in the example you mentioned in Omaha to then call other relatives and friends in other parts of the country who might be concerned. So kind of set up a daisy chain, if you will.
This is kind of the daisy chain that you call it is something that we've often been warned about, to set up in advance a contact person in case of an emergency situation, an earthquake, a fire. And this is something a lot of people should definitely think about doing now.
Exactly.
Well, excuse me, Judy, stay on the line with us, but I just want to let people know who have just tuned in. You're looking at a live picture right now of the Northridge shopping mall. Bullock's department store, major structural damage there. We don't have any words of any injuries or fatalities. Again, it was a good thing it happened at 4:30 this morning. as opposed to the time when the people are filling the stores doing their shopping. There was also other structural damage at the shopping center at a parking structure. Again, we do not know of any injuries or fatalities there.
Judy Peterson from PacBell, we thank you for updating us on the telephone situation. We'll be checking with you throughout the morning and afternoon to get updates from you. Thank you again. We're going back now to that apartment complex in Reseda. You're looking at a live picture as rescuers cut through the rubble there. That was a 3-story structure that collapsed into a 2-story structure. The entire ground level wiped out. Perhaps 50 units there. About a couple of dozen people have been rescued. 5 people are confirmed dead. And on the ground, we have Linda Moore. Let's go to Linda. Linda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I guess for those people who were in that building, there's nothing they can do but stand out there helplessly and wait for word of loved ones or neighbors who might still be trapped in that rubble.
That's what's going on right now. As I say, there's this kind of an eerie calm around this apartment complex. Many of the people still really in shock.
Linda, earlier
trying to calculate their losses and trying to figure out who is buried underneath there.
Linda, earlier you talked to some of the residents on camera. Tell us about what some of the people are telling you, or is there anyone there that you can talk to and have them explain what happened and what their concerns are and what they're going to do now?
Yeah, let me, excuse me, are you a resident? My daughter is. Hi, can I talk to you a second? What's your name?
My name is Carlene Rowe.
Where did you live? What
I live
level?
on the first floor.
You lived on the first floor? So what happened? How did you get out? Did it collapse on top of you?
Well, I know that things were falling, I think the ceiling was falling down, and so all we could do, me and my roommates, was go through our bedroom window because our screen glass door was, it was locked and it was stuck.
Were you crawling out while it was still shaking?
Yeah, we were just, I ran out the room and went to a doorway, and my roommate was right behind me. So
then did you see?
And the wall from
Linda,
yeah.
Did you know that the top floors were falling on top?
No,
of
I didn't know. I had no idea that it was.
What do you think? Do you think that the way it might have fallen, do you think there could be people alive?
I don't know.
All right, you're listening to Linda Moore talk to a resident of a major disaster.
We lost our picture. There it is back. It appeared the rescuers were just
they don't want to get in the way of
we
their
heard some
operation.
applause, apparently from people standing around. Okay, let's see if we can get a better look at this. One of the victims just pulled out. Again, they've been trying to establish voice contact to find out who's still alive down there, who needs immediate help. And they've been working with chainsaws to cut through that rubble. They have pulled this person out, put them on a stretcher now, and are trying to get them to some medical help as quickly as possible.
It appears that they're still working on that person, so there is hope that they are going to be able to get some medical help to save that person. We hope.
I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. It appeared perhaps that it was a woman.
Well, people are applauding now, and
that's a good sign.
I think that's a good sign. There was always an indication that this person that they've been working on for the last half hour was alive, because, as I say, it seemed like that there was some kind of communication going on. And again, that is how they're prioritizing this rescue effort right now. Is they're working on the people that they know
His eyes are
alive.
open.
He's moving his hands.
Yeah, that's very, very good signs.
A terrifying ordeal. Apparently, they were able to contact him verbally and let him know that they were working toward him. It didn't look as if he was too far away from the edge of the building.
No.
But it's hard to tell.
But what a job these rescuers are doing.
Well, I think he was one of the lucky ones, because when the third and second level came down, the whole complex, the bottom level, shifted over maybe 6 or 7 feet. And so where he seemed to be buried, and also someone else that they pulled out a little earlier, was shifted over about 7 feet. So he was in one of the better positions, if I could possibly even say that at this point.
A very happy moment to see someone being rescued from a terrible devastation of the collapsed building.
It's a miracle there was anybody alive on that ground floor. Imagine being in a building with 2 floors above you and them collapsing onto your floor. I guess people were caught in little pockets, or maybe under beds, or somehow little cubby holes when walls were twisted. and they were saved. But thanks to the work of these rescuers using those chainsaws and their bare hands to fight through there and get to those people, a couple of dozen people have been pulled safely out of that building.
Linda, earlier you spoke to a young woman. She looked like she might have been a student or something, holding a teddy bear, and she said that she lived on the second floor and woke up during the earthquake and looked out the window and realized she was on the ground floor.
Many of the people who lived on the second and third floor have told me that they didn't even know what had happened. They didn't have any concept of the whole building collapsing. There was just such an intense shaking going on that they didn't know till they started getting out what had actually occurred. And I do want to add, the fire department tells me that this operation here probably, they say, will go on till tomorrow. They say it is so massive here that they may be working on this until tomorrow now.
Well, all of us who were shaken awake this morning, and here in Southern California, that would have to be 15 or 20 million of us, were totally disoriented. We woke up, and it was such an intense jolt. We couldn't tell if it was an earthquake or if a freight train had hit the house. I mean, that's how sharply that shaking was.
And again, the fear that you don't know if you're in the worst of it or the least of it until you get out and find out. Yeah. Dave Lopez is standing by in West Los Angeles right now. Dave, exactly where are you?
Well, we're standing on what used to be the westbound lanes of the Santa Monica Freeway, and this certainly reminds me a lot of the Pareto earthquake in San Francisco when that double-deck freeway collapsed. The only fortunate thing about this is there were no cars in this area when it happened, and underneath, rather than having a double lane here, as a Caltrans worker goes right behind me, it's a storage area. So it's an empty storage area, at least it was at 4:31 in the morning, and you can see this was the level spot of the freeway. This is one of the busiest freeways in all of Southern California, perhaps the busiest in the world, and it's just a shambles right now. Now, just a little while ago, we left the Cedars-Sinai Hospital, which is about 5 miles from here, where they have confirmed 3 fatalities. We have some tape of what it looked like at the hospital. We'll go ahead and roll to the tape now. I don't want it in front of me, but it was not a panic situation. Anywhere from 50 to 70 people came in, mainly on their own. There were a few people that were transported by ambulances, and the hospital was kind enough to let us take some shots in the emergency room. We talked to one of the doctors. Here's what he had to say about it.
We're not sure if the patient died from the trauma or whether they had chest pain and some sort of cardiac event.
So 2 fatalities from the heart attack.
2 within the first hour.
Well, I was just kind of, I was getting up to run out of my apartment, and I had antiques falling off the wall. I had a huge antique fall off the wall, and as it was coming down, I ran through it. And it's kind of funny. I wanted to be out helping people, and here I am getting help.
How bad you cut yourself? Putting stitches in your leg there, huh?
Cut a tendon in my toes, so my foot's kind of not functioning right now.
Just he fell. We were trying to locate each other. It was dark, the house, everything. We couldn't see each other. And I called him, and he was following to me, and then he fell on the floor. He bumped his head.
Can he talk? Can he?
Yeah.
How are you feeling, sir?
I feel all right.
You feeling okay? Where'd you get hit? In the back of the head?
Back of the
head.
But I guess you never felt shaken like this before?
Oh, no. I don't know.
Had you ever felt something like that before?
Many years ago, but not like that. This was really something. Something, not light, not water, not nothing. We didn't have nothing.
How did you get here?
By car. I drove it.
I have chest pains and stomach pains from nerves, too, and a heart. And she said the monitor, my heart is beating pretty fast.
How did you get here to the hospital?
Ambulance.
They were able to get to your house?
Yes.
The minute the earthquake hit, your heart started going?
Yes. And then see the wall, I have a block wall around my house. It fell down.
But you're relaxed now and you're getting better?
Well, they gave me some medication.
Again, that situation at Cedars-Sinai, which is not far from where the epicenter hit, just talking to a few of the people who were admitted, anywhere from 25 to 30 were admitted for treatment. We talked to a few of them here. We're now back live on what used to be the westbound lanes of the Santa Monica Freeway. Ramon, why don't we just go ahead and roam around and show them just a little bit of what exactly happened here. You can just see how the rebars, the steel rebars, are just completely, they look like spaghetti, all crumpled concrete everywhere. This, again, I mentioned, is probably the most traveled freeway freeway in all of Southern California, and it is just totally devastated. There is nothing underneath. Again, I want to make it very clear that there is no worry about any cars or anybody being trapped underneath, because there is nothing underneath. Ramon, go ahead and pan over my shoulder. You can see how the freeway has just buckled for at least a good mile straight ahead. The freeway is not built like that. It is not a bumpy road. It used to be fairly level, but now you can see it is not. So again, at least from the Cedars-Sinai Hospital, we can confirm 3 deaths. I know that there's probably going to be much more than that, but 3 at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, at least 25 treated, at least 50 there. The hospital's on emergency power. The situation here seems somewhat calm, but as you can see, it's just unbelievable as you look around.
It looks like a bomb went off there, Dave.
Reminds me so much of San Francisco when that earthquake happened. But again, Mike, as I mentioned, that's where they had the double-deck freeway.
Right, and during a very busy time. Dave, before we leave you, just to get a little perspective, you are in West Los Angeles on the Santa Monica Freeway. You showed those very compelling stories from people who were in the hospital at Cedars-Sinai. Give us an exact location of where Cedars-Sinai is.
Cedars-Sinai is right off Robertson. It is, if you're familiar with the Fairfax district, the old farmers market is just about 2 miles to the west of that area. So it serves mostly the West Hollywood, West Los Angeles area. And of course, that's not the only hospital in the area, but that's where at least 50 people went to try to get treatment.
Okay, Cedars-Sinai, one of the most prominent hospitals anywhere in the West here, kind of on the fringes of Beverly Hills,
and
serving
a
West
major
Los
emergency
Angeles.
center as well.
Yes, it is. We have been watching some of the rescues in progress at that apartment house collapse in Reseda, and here you see a bird's eye view from Chopper 2. Up there is Bob Turr. Bob, can you give us any new information on that?
Oh, Michael, you know, we've been watching this all morning, but from the air you can see the full perspective of just what happened. This is almost like ground zero. Zooming on in, you can see an apartment house literally moved off its foundations about 5 feet into another apartment house. Then look down over here, you can see how the foundation buckled, then panning over to the right. There you can see some of the main portions of this apartment house actually collapsing. Now, the fire department personnel on the scene is tremendous. A number of units here. This is a major emergency problem. And as we swing around, I'll show you the parking structure. But literally, this apartment house, the foundation literally shook these apartment buildings off their foundation. The earthquake shook them off, moved them 5 to 6 feet. And now look down at this parking structure. There you can see a car that is toppled over on top of another car. That's the upper floor of a parking structure collapsing down on the subterranean level. And there you can see the whole apartment house off its foundation. As you can imagine, this complete apartment house is a complete loss at this point. This is on the 9500 block of Reseda, and their fire department urban search and rescue teams are moving through the apartment house, going by an apartment search, looking for additional victims. And as you can see from the aerial perspective, just very graphically, what happened here with the earth moving, knocking these structures off their foundation, causing the roofs to buckle, causing the foundations to collapse, and injuring and killing numerous people. There's a wide shot once again. Back to you, Mike.
Once again, you're in Reseda, which is in the San Fernando Valley. We're right near the epicenter of that earthquake. That really gives us a great perspective of a terrible scene. And as you look at that and you see just how much that building has collapsed, it's a miracle that anybody on those ground floors or on that ground floor is alive at all, and yet we know they pulled a couple of dozen people out of there.
We just saw them pull one person up. However, there have been 5 confirmed fatalities, 3 of them in one family. Again, as you mentioned, Mike, this is right where the epicenter of the earthquake hit this morning.
Right near Northridge.
Right near Northridge. And on something else that happened, another event that happened right at the earthquake at 4:31 this morning was a train derailment. Jose Sanders is where that happened right now. Jose, exactly where did that train derail? And I understand there's a possibility of some hazardous materials involved.
Linda, let me tell you all this. So first I want to show you the sheer force. You want to know how powerful an earthquake is. This is a Southern Pacific train you're looking at. The train was headed to Roseville in Northern California from Houston. Right now, we are in the city of Northridge. The bridge you see up above us is Havenhurst. That bridge itself has buckled. This train, which had 64 different cars on it, carrying about 6,000 tons of mixed freight, derailed, simply derailed. Now, the problem is these tankers here, a couple of these tankers contain sulfuric acid. Now, there's been a hazardous materials team out here throughout the day. There's a truck on the way to mop up some of this stuff. Actually, they're going to neutralize it with soda ash. Now, the people from Southern Pacific tell us there has been no injuries involved in this and that there's no real danger to people unless you actually get into the stuff, but they're keeping us well away from it. They say they should have this whole thing cleared and the track open once again by tomorrow. Hazardous materials teams are here mainly to safeguard and to make sure things go as planned. This has been just a center of activity here. I want to just show you, Chuck, if you can, right behind us there, you can see the other evidence of the force of this thing, that Best store behind us. You can see how it collapsed right there. And just beyond that is a bridge, and that bridge is up at least about 2 feet up above where it should be. There's just a big hump in that bridge. And so this all happened right here, right when this train derailed, and right at the earthquake epicenter, very near that epicenter. But again, the real story here is that there was sulfuric acid in some of these tankers, but we are told by officials here that that should be cleaned up momentarily. They assure us that there's no actual danger to the public unless you actually come into contact with that stuff, and they are making sure that does not happen. Actually, there's a truck on the way pretty soon that will be neutralizing it with sulfur ash, and I should say with soda ash, and it should be clear pretty soon. Linda, Mike?
Jose, clear something up for me. Was that train moving at the time?
Yes, it sure was, Michael. It was headed from Houston, the city of Houston, headed north to Roseville in Northern California near Sacramento.
We don't know how fast it was moving.
No, I sure don't know that part, but, you know, you can see what damage it did.
We are counting miracles this morning. Train derailments seldom come without some kind of casualties. And you say nobody was even injured at all?
Not a scratch, according to the people from Southern Pacific.
Amazing.
And that in itself is another one of those miracles you've been speaking about.
Really? Do we know how this is going to affect any kind of train service at all, or passage of other freight trains? What is this doing to the Southern Pacific?
Linda, what we can tell you right now is that this track is completely closed. As I said, they should have it cleared by sometime tomorrow, but until that time, as you can see, nothing can go along these tracks.
All right.
So it's going to be shut down. And we're feeling another earthquake right now, an aftershock. Right now, even as we speak.
This is a big one. This is a big one. It's shaking the lights in the studio.
This was a big one. We felt it right now, and it's still going.
And we're taking a look at our seismocam there, and we'll try to get a measurement on that for you as soon as we can.
This is probably the biggest one that I have felt in the last hour or two.
I think so, and they tell us in the next few days there is a pretty good chance of having a 5.5 aftershock. We've already this morning, we've had more than half dozen in excess of 4, but 5.5 is a very large earthquake in itself, especially if you're sitting on top of it, and that could further damage these buildings which have suffered structural damage in the initial jolt. Right now on the telephone, we have Bill Hurd from the Metropolitan Transit Authority with us. Bill, can you hear me?
Oh, really? Something you can tell me about?
Bill Hurd, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, you've been watching coverage from KCBS, the CBS owned and operated station in Los Angeles. Graphic live pictures of the results of the earthquake this morning. Let us recap for you. We're about 5.5 hours into this now to wrap up this terrifying day in Southern California. At just about 4:30 this morning Pacific time, a major earthquake hit the San Fernando Valley, measuring 6.6 on the Richter scale. Highways buckled, stranding some cars that were on the roads at that hour and damaging others. We just thank God that this happened at that hour of the day and not even 4 hours later. Buildings collapsed. Terrified residents ran out with just enough clothes on their backs to keep warm. They desperately looked for loved ones who may have been left behind. Then came the terror of fire. Numerous fires exploding throughout the Los Angeles area as gas mains ruptured and electrical transformers exploded. Highways are closed in many parts of the Los Angeles area. Water mains are broken, and fighting these fires has been all but impossible in some parts of the city. And with daylight, we got our first real look at the damage. It seemed even worse than it did in the dark. The total damage will be in the tens, perhaps hundreds, and maybe even billions of dollars. We're going to take a break right now and let our CBS stations along the line to identify themselves.
This is CBS.
Was I surprised when my dentist told me I had a tartar problem? Doctor, I said, I brush with baking soda and peroxide. He said, those aren't tartar-fighting ingredients, so your teeth aren't as clean as they could be. Use Tartar Control Crest. But doctor, I said, shouldn't I use baking soda and peroxide for my gums? Pete, he said, they're not proven to do anything special for your gums either. So I used Crest, and my tartar problem, no problem.
Tartar Control Crest. It's proven to fight tartar buildup. It's the dentist's choice.
No more surprises for me.
Wapner Newman is the law firm for serious injuries.
They have as much time as you're willing to stay to talk. They give.
The Wapner Newman firm really cared about me and my situation.
If you've been seriously injured, you need somebody who understands. That's important. But you need somebody who's willing to fight for you. You need somebody who has the guts to stand up to big insurance companies.
We're geared to handle the big case.
Call 569-0900.
There's a new time to watch American Journal here on Channel 10, a new time to see the stories worth watching every day. I'm Nancy Glass. Watch American Journal now a half hour earlier at 7 o'clock, right here on Channel 10. Join us.
Back in the snow again. How long and how much? Stay with Channel 10.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Connie Chung in New York with continuing coverage of the Los Angeles earthquake. Good day. It's been 5.5 hours now since the powerful earthquake struck Southern California. At least 10 deaths are reported, including 5 people killed when an apartment building collapsed. And there are hundreds of injuries. The quake registered 6.6 on the Richter scale. It was centered in the San Fernando Valley, just north of downtown Los Angeles. It was felt for hundreds of miles as far south as San Diego and as far east as Las Vegas. Damage is extensive. Buildings have crumbled, trapping people inside. Portions of freeways collapsed, crushing cars. A freight train reportedly carrying sulfuric acid derailed. And fires caused by ruptured gas lines are burning out of control. As many as 40 homes are on fire near Sylmar, California, at the far northern end of the San Fernando Valley. A spokesman at one Los Angeles hospital reported receiving, quote, a tidal wave of walking wounded. CBS News correspondent Bill Lagatude is on the scene in Los Angeles. Bill?
California homes perched high in the canyons came tumbling.
All right, let us go now to Bill Whitaker, who is in Los Angeles. Bill, can you tell us what's happening?
Hello, Connie. I am here in the San Fernando Valley, which is the area hardest hit by this quake. Just a few minutes before we went on the air again, there was an aftershock. And it's the sort of thing that just sort of keeps everyone a little disconcerted here. Right next door to me is a high-rise, and the people are going around knocking out windows that have been broken. As you can see behind me here, there's a parking structure that has collapsed. That is the scene all around here. We went out early this morning and started trolling around the San Fernando Valley. It was fairly eerie this morning. Out in the valley, there were gas main explosions that lit up the early morning sky. There are water main breakages with spewing gallons and gallons, hundreds of gallons of water, flooding intersections. People are trapped at intersections with no lights that are flooded out, with gas main explosions all around. It's a very chaotic situation right here. And also all around, you can see smoke surrounding the valley, and you know that these are pockets where there are fires that are ongoing. Right now, we are trying to check into the structural damage that has been done around the valley, but we know that there have been highway collapses, there have been houses that have been shaken off of their foundations, and people are going around trying to figure out how they're going to piece things together. And it's a little hard to do when these aftershocks still keep coming on. Connie?
Can you estimate how many aftershocks there have been, Bill?
I have really no way to estimate. I know that I personally have felt at least 5. There were a number this morning right after the main quake. As I was driving into work, I felt a couple more. There was one once I got into work. And since we've been out here this morning, we have felt a couple more. We were in a house with a family. They were trying to go back inside to try to assess the damage. And while they were inside, there was another aftershock, and they all scrambled and ran outside. Now they're afraid to go back into the house, which I think is quite wise.
Bill, have emergency crews been able to get to the injured people?
We are seeing and hearing emergency crews all over the place. I'm standing now on Ventura Boulevard, which is the main road through the valley, except for a couple of spots where the lights are out. I mean, as a matter of fact, the lights are out, it seems, the entire length of the boulevard. But the road itself is clear. There's not very much traffic. the emergency crews seem to be able to move freely. But they cannot go on many of the freeways. As we told you, some of the freeway overpasses have collapsed, and there are many roads that have buckled. And if they have not buckled, there are many roads that are now flooded with the breakage of the water mains. So it's very difficult to traverse around the valley right now, but it's an expansive area, and I'm sure that the emergency crews can find their way around to get to the places where they're most needed.
All right, thank you, Bill Whitaker. Now we go on to Bill Lagatuda, who has also a report from the Los Angeles area. Bill?
Connie, I've felt about a dozen aftershocks since the initial one very early this morning. And more importantly, the death toll in this region is at 5 now, but it's certain to go higher as people are located and bodies are brought out of buildings that have collapsed. We keep getting reports of that in many parts of this city. The good news in all of this is that it did happen very early in the morning. There weren't very many people out at work and in office buildings and on freeways that did collapse. And it's a holiday, and so traffic would have been light anyway, but it happened in the pre-dawn hours, and that perhaps saved a lot of lives. It was, to be sure, the biggest earthquake to be felt citywide in more than 20 years. And this is what happens when the earth shakes as violently as it did this morning in L.A. The Santa Monica Freeway, one of the busiest highways in the world, cut in two. One can only imagine what kind of casualties there would have been if the quake had struck at rush hour. Across the city, another freeway overpass heaved and fell, this one more than 30 feet. So far, despite scenes like these, only one person, a policeman, was reported killed here. This is the intersection of Interstate 5 and Highway 14, another major route into the city, cut off. All over Los Angeles, rescues are underway. At this apartment complex, 5 people are thought to have died. They're digging for survivors. And some of the quintessential California homes, perched high in the canyons, came tumbling down. Here, 3 houses collapsed. It appears all the people inside escaped. Not so in this neighborhood, where rescue workers pulled a dazed man from the debris of his home. A little girl inside was killed. She, like most people living here, was probably in bed asleep when the quake struck. An office building here was destroyed. It was, luckily, too early for people to be inside at work. In many parts of the city, gas lines burst and fires are burning. Some homes are still on fire. Water lines broke too, and many streets are flooded. A short while ago, LA's Mayor Dick Reardon went on television to urge people to be calm and not to panic. That's easier said than done. Connie?
All right, thank you, Bill. And also, I believe he declared a state of emergency for the Los Angeles area, and Governor Pete Wilson did the same. We have newer figures for you, Bill. You had mentioned that 5 people were killed, but we now believe that our reports tell us that 10 people were killed, 5 in that apartment building collapse, 1 police officer who was crushed under a freeway, and 4 people of heart attacks. Bill, you know, there's always so much controversy following an earthquake about buildings being safe, earthquake-proof. And I believe, though, that at this, we have just received word that there is this is the picture of a collapsed department store, the Bullock's department store in Northridge. This is KCBS's coverage. Let's join them now.
Came down would have been full. Michael?
Bill, this is Linda here. You know, we hate to even think about these things, but it is a shopping center. There's lots of merchandise around. There had been talk earlier of looting, not there, but in another location. Is there security around that area? Are they keeping people away?
Yes, there is. The Northridge Mall has its own large security force. They are roving the area with vans. Now, they've pulled out for a minute now, and as you can see, whenever the security people pull out, people come in to take a look, and then they come back in and chase them out here. But also, these people have only been looking. We have seen nobody with any improper intentions at all. They are looking. They are curious. Up close, you can see some of the merchandise inside. Nobody, for one thing, it's dangerous to go in there. Store could come down on any of these aftershocks. But everybody here is behaving properly.
Well, that's what we like to hear.
Yes.
In fact, that's what we all believe, that usually tragedy brings out the best in people.
And it does out here.
And we've seen that a number of times this morning, how people have pitched in and literally risked their own lives to pull other people out of the rubble. Let's go to the update desk right now in the newsroom, and Tricia Toyota with some new information for us. Tricia?
Well, Mike, yeah, we're getting some word in here about gas company problems. Obviously, there are numerous gas mains that have ruptured, and we've seen that all over the area. extra crews from the Inland Empire and Orange County are being brought in to help out in this disaster here. Two of the main transmission lines which bring in gas from out of state have ruptured. And of course, that would be two major gas transmission lines. They are now they're being repaired even as we speak, but those two lines are located at Rinaldi and Balboa, and of course earlier we saw a huge gas explosion there, and also in Fillmore near the Santa Clara River. But there have been a number of other smaller lines that have also ruptured, at least 10 other smaller lines, including one on Lincoln Boulevard in Santa Monica. But the gas company reiterates, and this is very important, can't stress this enough, that unless you smell gas, a heavy smell of gas around your apartment or around your home, don't turn the gas off because it's going to be days before somebody gets there. This is out here in the Palmdale area, I believe on the 14, where the 14 collapsed onto the I-5 freeway, and here we're seeing rescue efforts, people probably wondering what in the world is going on, if there's anybody that they know who might have been trapped under this massive collapse here. This whole area shut down, as are a number of other freeways around Southern California. By the way, I want to tell you that Governor Wilson is expected to be landing here in Los Angeles in the next couple of hours from Sacramento. He's expected to go to Parker Center, to the emergency center down at City Hall, and subsequent to that to have a news conference to let us know what's going on. He, along with President Clinton and, of course, Mayor Richard Reardon, have already declared states of emergency here for Southern California. Rory, are you there at the I-5 at 14?
Yes, Tricia. Yes.
Maybe you can tell us what's going on.
Okay, this is the section where the southbound I-14 and I-5 meet. And the I-14 is the freeway that completely buckled and landed on top of the I-5. Some of the cars that you're looking at are people that were on the freeway at 4:30 this morning and were hit by either falling debris or ran into one of these walls here. There's been only one fatality here. Amazingly, none of the cars that you're looking at, nobody in these cars suffered a fatality. The only fatality was a police officer who was hurrying down the southbound I-14 and apparently did not notice in time that it had completely collapsed and landed on top of the I-5, and he just flew off the 14 and landed face down on the pavement, and that has been the only fatality here. Unless, and as you're looking at the part of the 14 that fell on top of the 5, there is a possibility there could be maybe a car underneath there crushed. They won't know that for a long time. But obviously, both freeways are closed, both north and southbound, and have been that way since 4:30 this morning.
Well, Rory, we're told that that police officer who died flying off the end of this collapsed freeway was a motorcycle officer on his motorcycle on the way to work. He has not been identified yet, of course, until his family can be notified of this terrible tragedy. Late information from the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the MTA here in Southern California. They are asking all of their engineers, the operations personnel, safety and transit police personnel to come to work today. All other MTA office employees should not report unless you're notified by your supervisor. In addition to that, we're told the Metro Blue Line is closed because of power outages. Also, that the Red Line is completely shut down as well, according to authorities, because of power outages there. So there really isn't much of a way to get around Southern California today. And a poignant sight here, one car left deserted on this collapsed freeway.
All right, Tricia, can you hear me? This is Linda in the studio. Hello?
Yes, Linda.
Tricia, okay, I understand that we have a Vincent Moreno on the line right now from Caltrans. Are you there, Mr. Moreno?
Yes, I am. I'm speaking to another radio station, and I'll probably be doing a simulcast at this point.
Well, can we talk to you now, or?
Absolutely. Okay. Go ahead, because the information that you want is the same information that they want.
Well, we're looking at pictures of devastation on the freeways and the bridges collapsed. There's a lot of questions that are being asked right now about the integrity of these freeways and what could have been expected.
Well, first of all, in using that word integrity, I think that's kind of not the best choice of words to use. All I can tell you is that this is an earthquake, and when the ground shakes, there is going to be structural damage. Now, I can tell you that yes, it's going to happen, and that it has happened, and we do our best that we can in order to prevent it from happening. But we learn as we go along also, and that's why a lot of our seismic retrofit has been proceeded with in an orderly fashion.
But are you stunned that we would see this kind of collapse on freeways and overpasses we thought were fairly secure from a 6.6 earthquake?
Okay, you're going to have to repeat that question again.
This was a 6.6 earthquake.
Correct.
Most of us thought that in a 6.6 earthquake, we would not see this kind of damage. Are you surprised by this kind of damage?
Personally, I'm not surprised by the damage. An earthquake is an earthquake, okay? I can tell you that our engineers have done more than an adequate job in inspecting freeways that have had structural damage. That's why when we have the extreme minimal damage, we shut down freeways. And in shutting down freeways, it's for the purpose of doing a thorough inspection. I cannot tell you about how the engineers feel about the damage because I'm not an engineer.
Up to what measurement are these freeways supposed to withstand? This was a 6.6. Is there a limit, a minimum? That they go for, that they shoot for?
No. See, that's very difficult because when you're talking about measurements, you're going on the information that's given to you from geologists.
All right, excuse me, Mr. Moreno, we're going to have to interrupt you right now. We have an emergency situation.
We have a seismic expert with us. He'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, we want to go up to Bob, Chopper 2, Bob Turr, up above a dam there. Bob, what's happening there?
Well, Michael, what we're looking at is Pacoima Dam above Pacoima, which is in northern Los Angeles, northern LA City. And as you can see, all this dust that's climbing out of the canyon here, this is caused by aftershocks and earth slides. The hillsides here are collapsing down on the rear portion, the downrange portion of Pacoima Dam. So far, the dam looks pretty good. I've zoomed in. I've taken a look at the to see if we can see any cracks from Chopper 2 in the dam. So far, it looks pretty good. It's been built into the bedrock of the mountain range. However, portions are collapsing of the hillside downrange, starting to collapse. But so far, the dam is doing a great job, and we don't see any cracks building up. However, if you are in the San Fernando Valley, you will see this. It's quite dramatic. A lot of dust rising, and this is caused by the initial earthquake that we had a little after 4 and all the aftershocks. Every time we have an aftershock, another portion of this ridge collapses down in this area. So that's what you're seeing with this dust. And the good news is that the Pacoima Dam is structurally sound so far. Bob, we've been told that. Yes, go ahead.
Bob, let me interrupt you for just a moment. Keep that picture there, if you would, because in studio here we have Mr. Mark Casp, who is a seismic expert, quite familiar with this particular dam. Mr. Casp, what can you tell us about the situation there?
Well, during the 1971 earthquake at Silmar, we had a record up at Pacoima Dam just at that one abutment that was a 1G earthquake. And so the magnification of forces in 1971 at that dam abutment was very high. And it'll be interesting to find out what's happening.
In layman's terms, was it worse than what we just had this morning in 1971?
Much stronger.
Much stronger then. It withheld...
Up at Pacoima Dam,
okay.
That one record.
And it held then.
It held
so
then.
You have every reason to think it'll hold now.
I don't like that cloud of dust, but what's happening out there?
That's landslides down there. That's just from earth going down. I think it's worse than it looks.
Chopper 2, if I can fill him in, what you're looking at on this side...
He's telling us that perhaps if we give you an earpiece, you can hear.
Bob, the gentleman can't hear you right now. We'll talk to him just a moment longer here, and then if you have some information you'd like to relay or a question, we'll get back to you on that.
Right on.
Bob did say that it didn't look like there was a...
That's live coverage from our CBS station in Los Angeles. That's quite a dramatic picture. Harry Smith of CBS This Morning joins me now. Harry, my goodness, look at that, the landslide, those... the dust that it's kicking up.
Yeah, the pictures just keep unfolding. When this happened this morning, 4:30 Pacific Coast time, it was dark, and we really were in the dark for the first 45 minutes or hour or so. And as daybreak has broken every 45 minutes or so, we see another picture of something that doesn't look very good. Chris Scholes is a seismologist. Dr. Chris Scholes is a seismologist from Columbia University. He's with us here in the studio. We were talking earlier this morning about this very kind of a situation. This is not the only dam out there that could be in danger. What kind of danger really exists here, Doc?
Well, this particular dam, the Pacoima Dam, took the brunt of the 1971 earthquake. It had 1.1 G acceleration measured on its abutment. So, and it survived that. which is much more than it probably got hit this morning. But what we're seeing here are landslides, and you've got to worry about the damage from landslides hitting the dam or hitting the water if it's a large landslide and causing a big wave. What was dangerous in 1971 was another dam called the Lower Van Norman Dam, which is at the north end of the San Fernando Valley. That dam, which was an earth-filled dam, collapsed in 1971 to within 5 feet of its water level. And of course, if it collapsed 5 feet further, the water would have breached it. Fortunately, it didn't. So there are a lot of things like this that you have to worry about. And I'm sure the engineers from LA County are checking all those structures right now.
Now, there's some confusion as to where the epicenter of today's quake was centered. Here, I mean, it appears that it was Northridge. Isn't that correct?
Yes, but this big dot is exactly where it occurred, but it essentially ruptured a region a little bit smaller than that circle was actually the extent of it. The dot is just the point where it started. So it ruptured completely underneath the San Fernando Valley on almost a horizontal structure, about in that range.
So, bearing, if it was centered in this area, are those other dams in danger? And is there any way that you can connect or you can give us some information on that?
Well, again, the Van Norman reservoirs were not any closer to the 1971 earthquake than they are to this earthquake. That reservoir is just about here, whereas the one we just looked at, the Pacoima Reservoir, is over there. So it's hard to tell without actually visiting it. And
all right, and also the 1971 earthquake was centered in Sylmar, and if you can tell us, it's a little difficult to tell on this page.
The 1971
north,
earthquake occurred over here, a rupture about this size over here. Sylmar is around here. So this is much further to the west, and it's caused damage much further to the west, but they're sort of related earthquakes.
And talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, Doctor, about 71 and how they're related. 1971, more than 60 people died. How are these earthquakes similar?
Well, they're both similar in the sense that they're produced by secondary structure, and I can show on this diagram.
Pop it up there.
You're watching a live aftershock. This is a KCBS picture from our station in Los Angeles.
And Dr. Scholes, we can expect these for some time, right?
Yes, they'll be occurring for a couple of weeks.
And is it likely that they would be as strong as the original earthquake today?
No, the largest aftershock you expect is about a magnitude unit less than the main shock, so maybe 5.5. Although you can't rule out that there might be another large event triggered, but that's pretty low probability.
All right. You were about to show us...
Yes, I made this diagram up.
Yes, sir. Which camera is the best one to go to, guys? Right back over here.
One up
and this is a...
Tilt it down a little bit. There you go.
There.
Perfect.
Right.
This is a vertical cross-section now that I've drawn. This is the San Fernando Valley, and this is the Santa Monica Mountains to the south and the San Gabriel Mountains to the north. And what's the causative feature here is a fault that's almost horizontal underneath the valley, in which the upper part moves. No, this has no name.
All right.
It's probably not even seen anywhere on the surface. It's a buried fault.
All right.
And the upper part moves to the north relative to the southern part. And the earthquake occurred on that fault and broke about a 20-kilometer long section of that fault, which probably slipped about 3 or 4 feet. And all of that occurred within something like 5 or 6 seconds.
And the thing is because that's down there, 5 miles or so below the surface, and we're talking about maybe 12 miles long, people said they felt it for as much as a minute. So that's just reverberating down in there, right?
Yes, because this is a basin that's filled with sediment, so it's very soft material. And so the waves go up and they get trapped and they bounce back and forth. And so they feel like the earthquake lasted 30 or 40 seconds, whereas actually the actual motion was probably over in 6 or 7 seconds.
All right. Dr. Schultz, we're going to ask Waverly Person to join us. He's with the National Earthquake Center in Golden, Colorado. Director Person, can you tell us, was this an earthquake that went side to side, up to down? And I mean, can you describe what this earthquake was that was experienced in Southern California?
Well, very preliminary. What we have, this was a thrust fault, thrust earthquake that we've had, which means that it's thrusting upward and outward. That's what we have very preliminary reports on. But everything we've been talking about so far this morning have been very preliminary. We really haven't had that much of a chance to look at it and try to figure out just which might have been or just what fault it might be on and these kinds of things. What we've been talking about so far and what most people are talking about, these are just speculations to what they think might have happened. We did have a magnitude 6.5 earthquake in the same general area in 1971 and had about 64, 65 deaths in the area. And this earthquake is similar, but to say what fault is on at the present time, we really don't know. We haven't had a chance to really look at it closely.
And what is your judgment concerning the epicenter? Is it near
Well, the
Northridge?
epicenter's in the same area, the same place, about 25 miles due west of downtown LA, and seemingly the brunt of the damage had been in Northridge, Stillmar, and Stillmar was the area where most of the deaths occurred in 1971. The veteran hospital there collapsed.
And I think the question that everyone is asking, could this be the prelude to the big one?
Well, it's very hard to say. I would say no. I think that this 6.6 is probably the main shock, and one thing that everybody's been asking about the San Andreas Fault, this earthquake is not on the San Andreas Fault. It's quite a ways from there. And the way earthquakes occur in California, if you look over the past several years, they have been scattered around in many parts of California. In 1989, the World Series earthquake 7.1. Then back in 1992, the magnitude 7.6 in Southern California, Landers, California. Then in April of that same year, we had 7 earthquakes up in Northern California. So they're bouncing all over the state.
Waverly, earlier when we talked to you, you had a good view of one of your seismographs there, and that needle was bouncing from here to Kingdom Come. Have things settled down a little bit?
Yeah, you can take and beam on it here now, and you can see what we have here. You can see that it's not going the way it was when you came on earlier, but we're still having the aftershocks in here. And that ones that are occurring there now are probably less than 3. But it'll go 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll have something like a 4. So it appears to quiet down for a short time, and then it starts back up again. So this is to be expected for the next 24 hours or so.
And there was some pretty considerable earthquake activity in the week before, hasn't there been?
Yeah, over in the Santa Monica area last week, we located 4 of them. The largest one was a magnitude 2.7 and 2.8 on the Richter scale in the same general area. But at this time, we can't say that those earthquakes were precursors to this 6.6.
What are you worried about right now?
I'm worried about right now is strong aftershocks that would bring down buildings that have been weakened from the main shock. This is the thing that we are really concerned about at the present time.
All right, Waverly Person.
Thank you so much, Mr. Person. We appreciate it. We'll try to get back to you again later on this afternoon. Dr. Scholes, incidentally, the death toll has gone up to 11 now. Dr. Scholes, you heard Waverly Person say that it was difficult to determine exactly what fault had occurred, how long the fault was, or whatever, and you just told us that you thought you were able to determine, in fact, that it occurred on that particular fault.
Well, my drawing is a little bit schematic. It is this type of fault. There may be more than one type of fault like that. We don't even have a name for this fault. We know they occur extensively underneath these basins. And we know from the mechanism of the earthquake that it was this type of fault.
All right, we're looking here at KCBS coverage. This is an apartment complex where there is a rescue effort going on now. You can see the damage, obviously, and it's so difficult to determine whether or not there are people there. Let's join the coverage.
Any kind of serious kind of a temblor. And again, the Palmdale, the Highway 14, the freeway there collapsing onto the Golden State Freeway, the I-5 freeway, and that, of course, is totally shut down as well.
All right, Tricia, thank you very much. Just a moment ago.
All right, back now in New York. Doctor, tell us, back to the Pacoima Dam. I mean, if there is severe structural damage to the dam, what is the result? What happens?
Well, if there is structural damage, of course, and I'm sure there's engineers on the site right now looking for that, they'll have to try to draw the water down as fast as they can to reduce the water load and also reduce the potential damage if the dam were to collapse.
All right.
Just to update, we were looking at that picture from Reseda. That's in the area around Northridge, where they have confirmed 5 people died in one of the apartment collapses there. And one of those apartments, literally a 3-story building, 2 stories crushed down on the first floor. We saw them get a survivor out from underneath there just about 45 minutes ago or so. So they're literally going door to door in there, knocking on doors, digging through as best they can. And we'll have continuing coverage in just a moment.
This is CBS.
Good morning. And now let's meet our Employee of the Year.
So unrewarding, that plain bagel, when for 100 calories more, you could start each day with Philly cream cheese. All that luscious Philly. So cool and creamy on a warm, toasty bagel. For 100 calories a serving, you had no idea.
Real go-getter. Ladies and gentlemen, Diana Miller.
A bagel without Philly is just plain silly.
Women know their breast milk is the perfect food for their baby. That's why the WIC program promotes breastfeeding and good nutrition. WIC provides supplemental foods: cheese, milk, eggs, dried beans, peas, peanut butter, juice, and cereal. WIC helps pregnant women and mothers maintain good health during their childbearing years. Breastfeeding is the first choice for feeding your baby. For more information, call 978-6100.
Spring term of mainline school night classes for adults begin the week of February 21st. Register now. Use the application card in the catalog or phone 687-0460 for information. That's 687-0460.
American Journal now at 7, right here on Channel 10.
We are back with special coverage of the quake that struck before dawn today in Los Angeles, buckling and collapsing freeways, kindling fires, causing natural gas line ruptures, and knocking out power. It was centered in the San Fernando Valley. It was felt from San Diego to Las Vegas. Los Angeles Mayor Richard Riordan and California Governor Pete Wilson have declared states of emergency. It's a holiday today, Martin Luther King's birthday commemoration. All celebrations have been canceled in that area. There was to be a parade. Residents are being told to stay off the streets. It struck at 4:31 a.m., measuring 6.6 on the Richter scale. Buckled an overpass of the Santa Monica Freeway in Los Angeles and collapsed an intersection of 2 major freeways in the San Fernando Valley. Interstate 5, that's the Golden State, and Interstate 14, that's the Antelope Valley Freeway. Cars were crushed under the intersection. At least 1 person was killed there. 4 people died of heart attacks. 5 others died in an apartment building collapse, and there is 1 more death reported now. A total of 11 people reported dead. A freeway was damaged on Route 118, that's the Simi Valley Freeway. Harry Smith is with me now. Harry is with CBS This Morning. You've been carrying our coverage along from early this morning, as soon as the quake hit.
The most amazing pictures that we saw early this morning were places where buildings literally collapsed right into the hillside. And because there was such extensive damage and because communication was so difficult, folks were standing on top of wreckage, waving to the television station helicopters, summoning them to ask for rescue units to come to their neighborhoods. There was no way for these people to communicate what was wrong there, and this is more than a half hour. This is one of the situations in question. Some of these places where these houses collapsed, every single person crawled out alive.
Isn't that amazing?
And when you see that picture, it's nothing short of a miracle.
It's just amazing.
But then again, there were other places where we saw where the people were standing out on the street, waving to the traffic helicopters.
And look at those aftershocks, huh?
Cracking away as the day goes on there. And but it would seem to me, one of the things I'm most amazed by, early this morning we had reports, a few reports of looting, but thus far it seems like a lid has stayed on this city. And you've got to realize you've got natural gas explosions, you've got fires burning out of control, you've got torrents of water rushing down some streets, and you've got police and fire units stretched absolutely to their maximum. And thus far, a lid has stayed on this city, and calm has prevailed. There's no power in much of the city. This is a big mess, and they've got to be totaling damage in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's right. It's a very populated area. This is Encino that we're looking at. There are 3 million people in the San Fernando Valley. And you can see, though, that it's odd. Some of those homes seem to be just fine, and then there are pockets in which there is an absolute disastrous situation. Let's listen to Bob Turr.
Go ahead.
Major structure fire, an office building that burned to the ground because of a gas leak, a gas break in the line, and of course the building filling up with gas, and there was a slight explosion and fire.
Bob, for our viewers from back east, the Midwest, and other parts of the country who've been joining us on the CBS network, let's tell them where Encino is. It's in the shallow part of the valley, at the beginning part of the valley, just over the hill there. Quite expensive homes there, aren't they?
Michael, let me show you. This is the hillside. This hill separates West Los Angeles with the San Fernando and Van Nuys area. It's a major hill. Now out there is the Hollywood Hills out there and the Hollywood sign. And then as we pull back, this ridge separates West Los Angeles with the valley. It's Encino. These are very expensive homes. It's an affluent area. And just above Ventura Boulevard and just east of Beverly Glen. It's an area that a lot of entertainers live in, a lot of real estate people. These homes were built about in the 1960s, and in fact, if you were back east and you recall the major Bel Air fire that we had, it burned through this area into Bel Air. Bel Air would be just south of the position that you see right now, and these two homes went, and there are quite a few other homes in the area that sustained damage, including broken chimneys and back garages and other things that actually broke off. We're just on the edge of Sherman Oaks as well. Bob, now, there were some... Go ahead, Mike.
Let's update also on the toll. Officially, the death toll now stands at 11 people. However, we know that at least 6 people have died in an apartment complex in Reseda, which is in the San Fernando Valley. We know there have been at least 1 officer was killed in the collapse of a freeway overpass. We know a number of people have died from heart attacks and other kinds of sudden illnesses. And we know that there was another person killed in a fire. So obviously that's many more than 11. Officially, the death toll, however, stands at 11 at the moment.
Michael, we were given a fire department update. We were told that the fire department believed that they had 11 major structural failures, collapsed buildings, 11 of them. And that word just came in. There was an update to the fire chief. As we go left here, go to the left. We're going to be coming over a hillside here, just on the edge of Sherman Oaks now. And let me zoom on in, and then you can see some of the, we saw this a little bit earlier. There are cracks up on this hillside, and down below, as we go left, you'll see a home on Sherwood Place that actually collapsed as well. We're going to be coming around here.
Earlier, there were people there. You were apparently the first aircraft to go over the top of that collapsed home on Sherwood Place. There were people there waving to you. Our feeling was someone may have been trapped in the rubble. Do you have any update on that?
Well, that was the word that we got. Now, what we did was we immediately called the Los Angeles Police Department. Evidently, our information is the Emergency Operations Center failed. So we talked directly on TAC 1, which is an LAPD frequency, and we gave them the address, and they had fire department units about a quarter mile away. The police department came up here, and we understand they've gone through the structure. In terms of loss of life, I'm not sure at this point, but look at these pictures. Look at that car. Look at the home, the bedroom.
A house of cards just cascading down a hillside in between 2 houses that are still standing. Amazing.
But we did have a good look at those neighboring houses before. Bob got down close, and they had major structural damage as well. We have no idea. No, it would be foolhardy to even speculate about a damage estimate in terms of dollars and cents at this point. It's going to be staggering.
You know, just even in the Sylmar quake, we were talking about that earlier. Let's see if I can find my notes on that. I mean, the damage was in the multi-millions, and that was in 1971.
Yeah. Speaking of Sylmar, I think that's where Saida Pagan is right now. Saida, is that where you are?
Yes, I am. I'm at the Oak Ridge Mobile Home Park, and as you can see behind me, the fire is still burning after 35 or 40 homes went up in flames right after the earthquake. We understand that a gas main erupted. Neighbors around here were all trying to help each other hose down the houses, but as you can see, the flames moved much too quickly. With us right now is Captain Robinson of the LA County Fire Department. Tell us what happened when you arrived on scene.
Well, our primary function was just keeping the parts of the mobile home park that were not involved in fire from catching on. The ones that were burning we couldn't save, so it was just a matter of keeping it from spreading any farther.
Now, we understand that there are several fires around here. At least this is one of maybe 5 others that are around this mobile home park.
That could be true. I only know basically what we're working here with 11 mobile homes that were burned here, and we just we're confining it to those and keeping it from spreading.
And as you can see, it's still smoldering, and firefighters are there in the background hosing down these hot spots.
That's correct. Just a matter of keeping the hot spots from flaring up and making sure we don't have any of the gas mains and the leaking gas meters from flaring up on us and endangering other structures.
Okay, at this point, most of the people have been evacuated. We understand that there have been no fatalities and no injuries reported at this time. So that's the story from this mobile home park in Sylmar. Back to you.
Saida, is that what caused that leaking gas?
That is our understanding. The same situation as we saw earlier over at the Tahitian mobile home park.
So essentially, was this a firestorm, a virtual explosion where 10, 11 mobile homes caught fire all at once?
Very, very quickly, one, and then the rest of them followed one right after the other. That's our understanding.
You said the people were evacuated. Do you know where they were taken to?
Well, some of them have just gone out to relatives and neighbors, but we understand that right here there's a clubhouse, and that's going to be a main evacuation center for the time being. I'm sure other arrangements will be made later in the day.
All right. Thank you very much, Saida. We're looking at, this was a 6.6 magnitude, which we're told is a moderate quake. Try telling that to somebody who was jolted awake at 4:31 this morning. It was the most intense, either one of us, and we've spent most of our lives at one time or another on the Southland.
And we're getting those intense aftershocks right now, too.
I'm looking up 6.6, and I go back to 1954 on my chart here. There have been 6 earthquakes this large or larger, very few larger, but about this size or a little bit larger, since 1954. The Big Bear quake, which is down here in Southern California, 6.6 in 92. The Landers quake in 92, 7.5, a very large earthquake. Luckily, that did not hit in a major metropolitan area. Cape Mendocino of April of 92, a big year for earthquakes, 7.1. Loma Prieta, 6.9. That was in 1989. In 1987, there was a 6.6 quake in Imperial County. Then up in Northern California, Eureka, a 7.0 earthquake in 1980. And you go back to 1954 was the time previous to that when there was one 6.6. So an earthquake of this magnitude doesn't come along that often.
We were talking earlier about the Sylmar quake and how much damage it did. I did find my notes that in 1971 it did $500 million damage. So we can expect those figures to be very high for this one.
At least doubled.
We saw a map a little bit earlier. Right now we're looking at the live pictures of the mobile home park in the Sylmar area. But when we were looking at the map, you could see how far the quake extended. We're told by the people at Caltech that it was a 12-mile radius of direct effect in the Los Angeles basin, or Los Angeles area. But certainly it was felt much further away, the shakers were.
And again, the miracle of miracles is when this occurred, at 4:31 this morning, when so many people were sleeping, and we saw all of the buckled freeways and the collapsed bridges and the collapsed parking structures and a collapsed department store.
You know, it's amazing that more people weren't hurt. We do know that there have been fatalities. We have a total right now of 12. There have been countless injured, walking wounded, walking into hospitals. We understand our Mary Parks is in the hospital right now. I don't know exactly where you are, Mary.
Community Hospital in Granada Hills, is that right, Mary?
Right, that's where I'm at. And right now we've got to, we want to show you some pictures of some of the injured that have been coming in here all day. But we have a very traumatic situation here. We've got to get some information out over the air. And this is Richard Gold. He is the president CEO of the hospital. I understand we have a burn patient that we need to get transferred. What's going on?
That is correct. We have a patient who has second-degree burns and third-degree burns from their waist down and first-degree burns of their face. We need to get this patient transferred to Sherman Oaks Burn Unit, and we have authority or the ability for Sherman Oaks to accept that patient. We now need emergency transportation vehicle to be able to transport that patient, and that's an immediate need we would appreciate right away.
Okay, great. How many people have we seen come through here? Chuck, if you could just pan around and show some of the folks. The parking lot is still set up here like a triage center. What have we been looking at today here?
We've received at least 10 admissions so far. We have about 3 dozen patients that have been seen in triage already, and another, I'd say, at least 4 to 5 dozen patients in our parking lot. We are taking them on a priority basis due to level of injury.
So we're pretty much close to saturation point.
We are close to saturation point, especially the paramedics, and that is our biggest concern, is for the emergent patients that arrive to be able to receive the appropriate treatment.
Injuries, what are we seeing?
We're seeing a lot of feet that are cut due to broken glass. We're seeing some head injuries to things that have fallen, and we're seeing minor breaks and sprains.
Okay, now the communication problem, do you have phones working yet in this facility?
We've got partial internal phones, and we do have one line that we're using as an outside line with a person who works with us who's off-site. We've kept them on hold, and they've made outside calls for us.
Okay, well, and we'll get to work here, see if we can help you out on some transportation for that burn victim.
Mary?
Yes.
If you could talk to some of those victims, I don't know, some of them obviously are not going to feel like talking, but perhaps some of them could. I'm curious as to the extent of the injuries and how long they've been there and how long they may have to wait before they get medical treatment.
Sure. Can we talk with you live real quick here? How long have you been waiting here? And tell me about your injuries. What exactly happened to you this morning?
I lost my balance, fell on my shoulder, apparently separated it or dislocated it.
And what were you told when you showed up here this morning?
They just took my name and said to wait. That's all they had to say.
And what time did you arrive? You've been here how long?
Since 5:30.
Since 5:30. Have you been looked at all by a physician?
No. No, not yet. I guess they're taking the bleeders and things like that first.
Right. Well, we understand that a call has gone out for physicians and nurses throughout the Southland to step in and help out here at the facility. Were you injured at all? Tell me what was going on this morning at your home.
Everything was fine. My kids were fine. We just couldn't get out of bed, and my kids were real good about practicing earthquake safety. And they waited till I called them, and we met in the hall, and I got shoes, and we went out. So just to practice, to know what you're doing.
Just the one injury, then? Okay, it's a good thing. Something else I need to let the folks here who may be watching it. It's a problem in getting in touch with all of these folks here in the parking lot. There's a tremendous amount of noise, and we'll show you just how many folks are here, dozens yet, that have been here since 5:30 this morning.
And Mary, I'm going to interrupt you right now. We'd like to know the emergency situation you were talking about where they need to transport a burn victim to the Sherman Oaks Burn Center. Can you talk to the gentleman you were speaking to earlier and see if perhaps we can provide helicopter service or help in some way?
Well, we'll find out live right now. Interruption quick. Can we provide helicopter service in any way to get that man out of here for you?
That would be very helpful. We're trying to see right now if we can get that patient ready to go and even put him in a car, so a helicopter would be fantastic. I do know that Sherman Oaks has a heliport, so if you've got somebody who can get here and land, we'd be more than happy to transport.
How do we communicate with it?
How do you
Yeah, can you give us the frequencies for the helicopter and all that on your roof?
Well, we don't have a roof access to drop down on. They'd have to come to the parking lot. We have to clear a space out here and drop the helicopter down right here in our parking lot.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, we'll see what we can do about that. An emergency situation, we hope that the people in our newsroom are listening to that.
We'll be in contact with Bob Turr right now, and Bob Turr will be there, I'm certain, within minutes if they can get that parking lot cleared out, and then we can get that victim
He was burned, apparently, from the waist down. Well, can you tell us about his injuries, Mary?
Well, we know that he suffered first-degree burns on his face, burns over about 70% of his body from the waist down. We're not certain exactly which part of the Northridge area that he was at, but we do know that something occurred here in the Northridge area, the accident. We don't know if it was an apartment fire or a car fire. We've had several of both in that area this morning.
There have been a number of automobile accidents reported where people have been taken to the hospital because there were no traffic lights and people were driving recklessly, and and even before the dawn broke. So that also was a major problem.
Mary, we'll be checking back with you real shortly there as Bob Turr gets back there to transport that gentleman to the hospital.
Before we leave you, Mary, let's just give our viewers the perspective of where Granada Hills is in the valley.
Okay, here, we've got an update here.
We have, if you can bring a chopper, we've got space to be able to bring that chopper down and transport that patient.
Where's our chopper going to go?
Chopper's going to go over behind, between our parking structure and our skilled nursing facility. We've got space available by our engineering department.
Okay, give us a perspective where Granada Hills is, so we know where to send for our viewers, and so we know where to send this chopper.
The chopper would be a half a block north of Devonshire, and we are at the corner or inset of Devonshire and Balboa.
Okay.
All right, Mary. Chopper 2 should be there within minutes.
Great.
We'll be checking back with you then.
There are a lot of communities that have names that are separate, for example.
Hospitals in the San Fernando Valley that have been closed, so obviously the situation is critical. It's making emergency help even more difficult. This is a fire that's burning out of control, as you can see from this morning. Earlier this morning, the fires that have burned incessantly here.
That's a natural gas line was underneath that road, literally erupted and exploded and incinerated about a half a dozen houses around there. And then you can see how the water line, water lines and water mains have broken as well, flooding the streets. Some of these fires couldn't be attended to at all because there was no water pressure because the water mains were broken right next to where the natural gas pipelines had exploded. And this incinerated at least a half a dozen houses right around there.
We don't know where that burn victim had received his injuries, but good heavens. President Clinton has spoken with the Los Angeles mayor and the governor, and he is sending representatives from FEMA, from the Transportation Department, from the Housing Department, and has promised emergency help. We will be back with more coverage here on CBS in just a moment.
I'll never go back to denture pastes or powders again.
Here's why. Seabond denture adhesive. No other adhesive works like Seabond, and it holds dentures so tight, so long. Seabond combines two powerful adhesives into a soft micro-thin seal that bonds your dentures to your gums, can hold them comfortably all day long.
I'll never go back to pastes or powders.
There's no messy cleanup. Seabond is so easy to remove. Nothing holds dentures like Seabond.
You'll never go back to pastes or powders again.
Hey, gang, catch this! There's a new kind of taste, new kind of flavor, new kind of orange. You just gotta savor. Carefree, sweet-free, struggle-free, regularity. It's new orange flavored Mayrite. Huh? Daily fiber therapy.
Fiber? Fiber?
Fiber?
Introducing the clean, crisp taste of, that's right, fiber. From the makers of Maalox. If only all fiber tasted this good.
To make my nachos, I lay the chips down with the curls facing up and heap on so much cheese, salsa, refried beans, and jalapenos, you can barely lift a chip.
But thanks to new Palmolive Plus, lifting off the goo from the dish is no problem. It even gets at the stuff that was so greasy it seemed impossible. And Palmolive softens hands while you do dishes.
So, before my tongue cools off, I'm already finished.
New Palmolive Plus. You cook, we'll clean.
The only difference between these eggs and our eggs is, Oh, yeah, ours don't have any fat or cholesterol. Egg beaters. We're good eggs. Where do you find new egg beaters? Same place you find eggs, in the egg section. Of course, you'll still find us in the freezer section, too. Egg beaters. We're good eggs.
Good afternoon again. I'm Connie Chung here with Harry Smith of CBS This Morning. An earthquake has hit Southern California in the San Fernando Valley area, 6.6 on the Richter scale. President Clinton has spoken with Los Angeles Mayor Richard Riordan and Governor Pete Wilson this morning. James Lee Witt, the head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, is on his way to Los Angeles now. Los Angeles International Airport has reopened. President Clinton is also sending Housing Secretary Henry Cisneros and Transportation Secretary Federico Pena. The death toll is now 14. 14 people have died in connection with this earthquake, but there are hundreds of injuries, damage extensive beyond what we can probably report at this moment. There were reportedly 30 to 40 fires near Sylmar. That's the epicenter of the earthquake, we believe, is Northridge, but the epicenter of the earthquake that hit in 1971 was Sylmar. You can see, I was just about to take the map, Los Angeles, here we are. This is the area, actually north of Hollywood is where the epicenter is. Northridge is in the San Fernando Valley. It's an area of about 3 million people. Harry, it has been quite a dramatic morning here.
And if we can look at that map again for a second, you want to look at some of the freeways. We know how dependent Los Angeles and this greater Los Angeles area is on these roads. And the Big Five up there, there's a huge crushing expanse of freeway that's down there. Santa Monica Freeway, which is down just north of LAX, has a huge expanse that has been crushed as well. And if these highways, they haven't even had a chance to go out and look at structural damage. This is just the stuff that's apparent, things that are going to be closed down for weeks and months and perhaps longer, and some of the most traveled roads in all of Southern California.
That's right, and this quake hit at 4:31 a.m. Had it hit at any time during the rush hour, either morning or afternoon, it could have been disastrous because we saw these intersections of the freeway just collapsing, main freeways.
The Santa Monica Freeway collapsed. You remember in San Francisco, the 880, the Nimitz, where they just collapsed right down on top of each other, and it really was a miracle that it happened at 4:30 and not 12 hours or even 3 hours later.
That's right. Dr. Chris Scholes, he is a seismologist. He's with us here. He's from Columbia University. We're looking at, Dr. Scholes, some earlier coverage of these freeway collapses. Now, in San Francisco, that earthquake was 7.1. That was in 1989. We saw the same kind of damage in that earthquake. 63 people died.
Well, the difference was, in that earthquake, in the 1989 earthquake, it was in the hills in Santa Cruz Mountains, which was a long way from where the damaged freeway was. And even though it was a much larger earthquake, it was about 10 times bigger energetically than this earthquake. But this earthquake was very close to the center of population, which is why it has caused so much widespread damage.
This is an important picture. Tell us about why that's important. We're looking at that freeway, and just before there, we saw that support structure that looked like it blew up right in the middle of it. Why is that an important picture?
Well, this damage and most of the other damage we've seen look like it's direct compression, vertical compression damage. And that's because the earthquake was right underneath these structures, and the waves came right up from below and put those structures under compression. So we saw those uprights being driven right up through the freeway.
There it is.
And now, is that why seismologists call this an up and down earthquake?
No.
What is that? What's the significance of that?
The reason for this is that this occurred on a thrust fault in which there was vertical motion on a fault that's slipping up like this, rather than the sideways motion that you would occur on the San Andreas fault like the 1989 earthquake.
One of the other things that is significant, I think, as we looked at aerial pictures just a couple of minutes ago, we would see a house completely collapsed, and next door it looks like it's intact. We talked to one of our CBS engineers earlier this morning, Dick Johnson, who said the entire inside of his house was destroyed. In other words, you could walk outside and see what looks like a perfectly intact structure, but inside, everything on the walls had collapsed, plaster fallen down, mirrors, buffets, china cabinets, whatever, all of that stuff crashing down to the middle. And so these pictures are somewhat deceiving in that we don't see a lot of the interior damage.
And the explanation of that, can you help us with that, Dr.
Well, what will happen is that you have an earthquake and you're in a high-intensity region. Even if you have a house that's well built from structural standpoint, like it's a wooden frame house, single story, it still gets all shooken up. And so everything inside is all loose, and you just essentially have a rubbish heap inside the house.
This is pictures from earlier this morning where that one of the gas mains had broken and exploded and leveled a number of the houses around there. And of course the water mains had broken too, and the water's just poured down the thoroughfare there. It's unimaginable, I think, for those of us who are so far away from it and looking at it through a television screen, what it must have been like. As we talk to people who were literally shaken out of their beds this morning, lifelong Los Angelinos who have certainly seen and felt and experienced many an earthquake in the past, some that we talked to said they had never felt anything like it.
And this, of course, Dr. Schultz, is that Pacoima Dam. Can you review with us a little bit of the problem here?
Well, this dam, which is a concrete arch dam, was previously tested in 1971. It took the brunt of the acceleration from that earthquake and remained unharmed. But what we're seeing now are landslides in the canyon around the dam. That's what all the dust is coming from. And so the worry is that you'll get secondary damage from landslides.
And go ahead. Forgive me. In 1971, when that earthquake occurred we have about 30 seconds for this answer, what happened?
Well, in that earthquake, there was...
The dam survived.
This dam survived, the Pacoima Dam, which we were looking at.
These are the 71 pictures.
But there was another dam called the Van Norman Dam in the north end of the San Fernando Valley, which was an earth-filled dam which collapsed within a few feet of water level.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Schultz. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is CBS. This is American Journal.
Who were they to tell me I can't see my daughter?
These are the stories worth watching.
I'm not angry at her. I don't know why.
I would like her to be in a regular class just like me. It really hurts because he is my dad.
The stories worth watching every day. Watch American Journal with Nancy Glass.
American Journal now at 7 right here on Channel 10.
It's coming. The worst breath of the day, morning breath. And ready to meet that sticky, pasty film head on. A whole new feeling of clean. A clean as fresh as smell. Introducing the new cooling formula in Peppermint Scope. Its antibacterial action still kills millions of morning breath bacteria on contact. And compared to that other blue, more people prefer its new cooling formula for leaving their mouths feeling cleaner. Discover a whole new feeling of clean. New Peppermint Scope.
Ordinary pickles are cooked, and most don't snap. Not Clausen. They're packed fresh and stored cold, so they're always crisp and delicious. Taste the difference. Cold, crisp, Clausen.
Cops, now at 7:30, only on Channel 10.
Back now with CBS News continuing coverage of the Los Angeles earthquake. I'm Connie Chung here with Harry Smith. It is just after 11 a.m. on the West Coast, 6.5 hours after the earthquake struck, and it is still a very dangerous situation. At least 14 deaths are reported and hundreds of injuries. Aftershocks are continuing, and that means still more buildings and roadways could collapse. The earthquake struck before dawn, just after 4:30 a.m. Pacific time. It was centered in Northridge in the San Fernando Valley, about 60 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles. Homes are on fire, gas and water mains broken, people trapped in damaged buildings. Harry Smith, it is an incredible scene that we have witnessed.
Up in the epicenter around Northridge, there are a couple of apartment buildings that have literally collapsed on themselves, about 3 stories high, where 2 stories have collapsed down on the first story of or floor of the building. We have reports from there that at least a half a dozen, or rather 5 people, confirmed dead in one of those apartment structures. We saw pictures earlier this morning, aerial view around Cal State Northridge, and a supposed parking structure that was supposed to be earthquake-proof, half of which had collapsed. Students out in a field, out of their dormitories, and the only safe place to be, which is someplace away from buildings.
There is a trailer park area as well, in which there were 40 trailers burned to the ground. Bill Lagatuda is in Los Angeles. He has an update for us. Bill?
Connie and Harry, the aftershocks continue to rattle the city this late morning. But fortunately, none has been as big as the earthquake that gave L.A. its wake-up call at 4:30 this morning and caused so much damage and at least 14 deaths. At this apartment building, which heaved and swayed when the earth moved, at least 5 people were killed, and at the moment, rescue teams are pulling out survivors. Those who died might not have known what hit them. It was so early, and they were probably in bed asleep. LA's rudest wake-up call in 20 years broke freeways in 2. This is the Santa Monica Freeway, Interstate 10, one of the busiest highways in the world, buckled and broken. And who knows how many might have died here if the quake had struck at rush hour. Across the city, a piece of Highway 14 fell onto Interstate 5, another main thoroughfare. And despite these pictures, only one person, a police officer, is believed to have been killed. Some of the quintessential California homes perched high in the canyons came tumbling down. In this neighborhood, in the hills above the valley where the quake was centered, a man is pulled from the debris, dazed but alive. A young girl was killed here. Gas lines snapped and fires broke out. At least 20 trailer homes here were consumed by flames. In other places, water lines burst and flooded streets. In every part of the city, it seemed, there was some damage. Here, a church that fell apart.
It had gone through the first phase of earthquake reinforcement, but we had not finished with the dome yet.
LA's mayor went on television trying to calm the panicky.
I congratulate the citizens of Los Angeles for the cool they've shown so far. Keep it up, and God bless all of you.
LA's mayor declared the city to be in a state of emergency. The governor of California is touring the area, or going to be touring the area shortly. He, too, declared a state of emergency. It's important to point out, Harry and Connie, that this was not the big one that those of us who live in California fear. That would be widely believed to be 8.0 or greater, sometime expected within the next 50 years. This was not it. The reason this one has alarmed the city so much is because the epicenter was so close to the major population center. It was 16 miles from downtown Los Angeles. That's right in the middle of everything, and that's why we felt this one so strongly.
Bill, I think that many of us have the impression that incrementally, if this is a 6.6 and the 8 would be the big one, that it would be just a couple of points bigger. But in actuality, it is greatly intensified were it an 8. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it multiplies exponentially, and I can't do the math offhand in my head, but you're quite right. An 8 would be much, much larger than this one. And as I say, the reason this one rattled so many nerves is because the ground under which this was centered is in a major population center. And that's why an earthquake, think of an earthquake as a stone being dropped into a pond. It radiates outward, and the further you are generally from the epicenter, the least of an effect you feel. My home, when it hit maybe 16, 20 miles from the epicenter, I felt it quite strongly. It's hard to imagine what it would be like sitting right on top of it. One other quick point I'd like to mention for our viewers looking in from around the country. Most of Los Angeles, I think it's safe to say, is up and running. The city has not been destroyed. It has not been flattened. Yes, there's been a great deal of damage. There has been deaths, probably more deaths we're going to learn of as the day goes on, but Los Angeles is by and large alive and well. We're shaken up, but we're still here.
And can you tell us, has power been restored in most of the areas and phone service as well?
Phone service has been restored in most of the city, and power has been restored in many parts of the city. I can't tell you offhand whether it's where the power grid has been completely reconnected, but at this hour, what are we, about 6 hours after the fact, most of the power is on, and phone service, most of it is up and running too.
All right. And also, I heard you describing to Harry this morning the length of the earthquake, when you felt it this morning, I mean, and it's been described by many people differently, from as little as 30 seconds to a minute and a half.
You know, they always seem much longer when you're in the middle of them. This one seemed to me to last at least a good minute, and most people seem to agree it lasted somewhere between 50 seconds and a minute. That's another thing that's important to know about earthquakes. If you can have a small reading on the Richter scale, but the longer it lasts, the more damage it can do. All of that's factored in. It also depends on the kind of soil on which your house is located, how far you are from the epicenter, and how long the thing shakes. So yeah, I think generally most people felt it for a good minute. That's not a good thing. Most earthquakes last 30 seconds at the most. This one, a minute, fairly long.
And I mean, I know I've experienced those very short ones, and it seems like an eternity anyway. Bill, there's always so much controversy about the buildings and whether or not they were built to be earthquake safe. Do you recall, after a certain period of time, there were new buildings that were there were very firm rules and regulations regarding the structures and new buildings that were built.
The earthquake codes here in this city are some of the strictest in the world, because we're obviously in a region that's quite precarious because of earthquakes. In the past 20 years, the codes have been tightened and tightened, so much so that the newer buildings, the very, very tall skyscrapers in downtown Los Angeles, are said to be among the safest places in the city. Proof of that probably today is that there doesn't seem to be any major structural damage to any of the high-rises in downtown Los Angeles. This earthquake was centered in the San Fernando Valley, out in an area near Sylmar, which 23 years ago, in 1971, they had the worst quake prior to this one. And at that time, yes, part of a freeway collapsed, but a hospital also gave way, and many people were killed. That hospital has not been rebuilt, but other buildings that have come up in that area have been built up to this new, tighter safety code, and they're still standing. So a lot of the buildings that we're seeing collapsing and being badly damaged by this are the older buildings. The newer ones, even the giant skyscrapers downtown, are very, very earthquake safe.
Mm-hmm. We're looking at a picture, Bill, of Kaiser Permanente Hospital in Granada Hills. Bill, one other thing, when we were talking about the structure, let's see, you just reminded me of something and now I've forgotten, so Harry.
Well, Connie, let me point out that this is a Kaiser Permanente. This is one of the office buildings here. It was not a hospital. And fortunately, when the quake hit at 4:30 in the morning, nobody was in doing the paperwork in that building. So as far as we know, no one was hurt. I dread to think of what would happen had that been the Kaiser Permanente Hospital, even at that hour.
Forgive me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about the scope of this thing early this morning already, before we had any idea about the damage or anything else. Folks said they could feel it as far south as San Diego, as far north as Santa Barbara, and as far east and northeast of Los Angeles as Las Vegas. So while this was not the big one, it was certainly felt, and the pictures we keep seeing are just devastating.
Oh, Bill, I do recall what I was going to ask you about was that KCBS was talking to a representative of the California Transportation Department, and he was really defending the fact that the freeways cannot withstand, no matter how structurally sound they are, if the quake is hitting at a particular section, if the fault exists there or what have you, that there's no way to prevent the freeway from collapsing.
Well, I suppose that's true, but in the past 10 years or so especially, you've seen a major reinforcement program taking place here along the various freeways, where the concrete pilings have been shored up and reinforced. Question to be answered in the next few days as to what it will be, whether or not this reinforcement took place out here in this area where you saw the freeway come tumbling down.
Bill, Interstate 14.
Yeah, we're going to interrupt you for a minute. Go ahead, Harry.
Well, this is a live picture. You saw the KCBS television reporter down on the ground in Granada Hills. Let's go live to KCBS coverage right now.
But he's suffered some very extensive burns. John, how did it happen? Where were you, John?
I was in the home when the propane tank caught fire.
Okay, John was at home when the propane tank blew during the earthquake. And you can see, and John's given us permission, you can see the blistering of the fingers, and these are 2nd to 3rd degree burns. His chest has also sustained some terrible burns as well. He's been wrapped up in saline solution. He's been given an IV. We've got the IV going right here, and he sustained some pretty good burns, but you doing okay, buddy? We're going to get him, the flight over to Sherman Oaks Burn Ward is just a couple more minutes, and once we're there, we'll be able to get him in the hands of some very capable physicians that can tend to this type of specialty. John was over at Granada Hills Hospital, and for some reason, they had to call in Chopper 2, couldn't make contact with the fire department, and we're doing this medevac run. The whole flight, what would normally take on the ground with this earthquake, maybe as long as 45 minutes, will be about 3 minutes. And that really saves a lot of time, especially when you have somebody in critical condition with these types of burns, Michael.
Yes, he looks remarkably alert when you consider what he has been through.
It's very common for burn victims. They are alert, they're conscious, and fortunately, how's your breathing? You didn't breathe any of that stuff in? That's really very fortunate. I used to be a emergency medical technician, and what we would see with people that would breathe in these superheated gases, that would always be a big problem with their recovery. But John doesn't seem to have any burns around his mouth or nose, just forehead and hands. Looks more like a flash fire.
Maintaining the fluid balance is so important in burn victims, and you say that they have wrapped his burns in saline-treated bandages, and he has an IV.
Van Nuys Boulevard. Yeah, let me just give a few more directions here. 12 o'clock.
Okay, while Bob gives those directions, let us tell our viewers who have just joined us what happened. This gentleman right here was at his home when a propane tank blew. He was burned over a considerable portion of his body, was taken in pretty bad shape at the time to a community hospital in the San Fernando Valley in the city of Northridge. They were having trouble getting him transported to a burn center that specializes in this sort of thing. They couldn't adequately treat him there, and they had no way of transporting him. They even had no vehicle to transport him in.
And no communication.
Had they had one, it would have taken 45 minutes. We were able to call in Chopper 2, our helicopter here, and within just a few minutes he landed, and they are now transporting him to the burn center, an air trip of about 3 minutes. Critical time.
We can hear Bob Turr's voice in the background saying that they are landing right now. The Sherman Oaks Burn Center does have a heliport, and they are ready and waiting for him. Here you can see the spot where the helicopter will land. The man's name is John. He seems to be in fairly good spirits. He did tell us himself that the propane tank did explode during the earthquake.
He apparently suffered no lung damage, and that's a big plus for him, for his long-term chances of survival. We're losing the signal now. That happens when Bob Turr lands. He was coming in for a landing, but apparently he did not breathe in those superheated gases.
That's what Bob seems to think, and he did have some emergency medical experience earlier,
yes,
so he speaks from a little bit of experience.
So what we're going to do is we'll continue to update you on this man's condition as we find out. We'll stand by and get you the information just as soon as possible. Meantime, Linda Zolman is in Sylmar, I believe. Is that right, Linda?
We're in Fillmore, actually.
Fillmore, I'm sorry.
In Ventura County. What you're looking at is the Fillmore Hotel, and this is a hotel apartment building that was opened up just like a can opener. Fortunately, somehow nobody was hurt. It's hard to believe looking at what that hotel looks like. The people who live here, mostly farm workers, they have been taken to a nearby shelter. If you come over here a little bit, you can see also this hotel, as it collapsed, fell onto several parked cars along the street here in the downtown business district of Fillmore. All these cars just completely smashed. Again, it was lucky that no one was seriously hurt. The authorities here in Fillmore tell us that about 40 to 50 people have been injured. No one killed, no one seriously hurt. Most of those injuries have been moderate. But this is what it looks like throughout the business district in Fillmore. This is an older section of town, and much of the older buildings have not fared too well. They are mostly made of brick and concrete, and those are the older buildings that have not done well. The newer structures have done a lot better. A lot of residences have had foundations loosened. What the city is doing now is going through checking individual homes and apartment buildings to see what's habitable, and telling people in the meantime to stay away from buildings that look damaged. Then they will get to the business district and go through one by one and tag all the stores and businesses that don't look like they're in very good shape. Also in Fillmore, near here, a mobile home park had some damage. There was a gas main that exploded there and a fire. One of the mobile homes was lost in that fire. Again, no serious injuries. So a lot of property damage here in Fillmore, but fortunately very little damage to people. I cannot hear you, so I'm going to toss it back to you now at this point.
All right, thank you, Linda Zellman in Fillmore. Now, Fillmore, again, is a community in Ventura County, which is northwest of Los Angeles, but still in that area up in the San Fernando Valley area.
A lot of farming going on around there.
Yes.
A lot of farm workers in that town.
Yes, and the area where Linda was, older community, you could see that the structures were brick, but it was remarkable, Michael, to look at the shells of those apartments, and you can see a bed, and you think of someone lying in that bed when all of a sudden the wall just was gone.
It's a wonderful thought that there hasn't
That's KCBS's coverage. That's our owned and operated station in Los Angeles. The death toll now is up to 16. Bill Lagatut is in Los Angeles. Bill?
That rise in the death toll, Connie, is due to the fact that 2 more bodies have been pulled out from the debris of that apartment building, that complex that collapsed in the San Fernando Valley when the earthquake hit this morning. And so the death toll now, as you said, is 16. We have some late pictures in that we would like to show you from the San Fernando Valley, the Sherman Oaks area, where fires are burning as a result of broken gas mains that have burst all over the city. This is Ventura Boulevard, which is a main east-west thoroughfare through the San Fernando Valley, an area of 3 million people in Los Angeles, one of the biggest population centers of the city. And this is the kind of panicky atmosphere that pervaded Los Angeles this morning. When the earth cracks, gas mains break, a spark in the air starts a fire, water mains burst and streets are flooded, and fire crews are dispatched all over the city this morning. Car alarms were ringing and fire alarms were heard throughout the city as an emergency response took place. Most of the waiting now is in wondering has to do with the idea of aftershocks. And whenever you have a big earthquake, you generally do have aftershocks, and we have had a good deal of them as a result of this earthquake. We've had 35 aftershocks in Los Angeles that measure greater than 3.0 since the initial quake, and 2 of them over 5.0. Those are significant. Those are the kind where when you're sitting at your desk, you hear the slow rumble begin and you think, oh my God, it's happening again. I should point out that the chances of a bigger aftershock diminish rapidly with time. As we sit here now at 20 minutes past 11 o'clock in the morning, we're told that there's a 50% chance now of an aftershock of 5.0 or greater, a 25% chance of an aftershock 5.5 or greater. As for an aftershock as big as the initial quake this morning, only a 10% chance of that right now. And the pattern of aftershocks has been fairly regular. That is, that seismologists have not been surprised by the sequence of events that have happened here this morning. Again, you're looking at pictures in the San Fernando Valley, Sherman Oaks, California, along Ventura Boulevard, at some of the mini malls, some of the small businesses that caught fire when gas lines broke and were ignited after the earthquake this morning.
For those, perhaps we can be of service to some of those who have relatives in the Los Angeles or Southern California area. Are the authorities telling people it's all right to try and call in?
Call in if you absolutely have to, but you may find that the phone lines are busy. I think I can safely say that the odds are, if you have someone living here, the odds are that they survived this, despite the horror of the pictures we're showing you. This is a live picture from Granada Hills, which is in the San Fernando Valley, and this is another gas main that burst and caught fire. The odds are that your loved one survived, and I should point out that despite what you're seeing on national television, as was the case in the Los Angeles riots, as was the case in the brush fires and the flooding that we tend to have around here, most of Los Angeles is intact and up and running. We're a little jumpy, but we're still here.
All right, Bill, can we go back to that live picture from KCBS a second? It is amazing to me, just as the crews get out, as we get the live trucks up and running around the city, just how many places where we're talking about what? This all happened almost 7 hours ago. The thing hit 6.6 on the Richter scale at 4:31 Pacific time. That's almost 7 hours ago, and there are still fires burning. There are still gas lines that have broken, explosions that have taken place, and they are not really in a position of having this really under control. Let's listen in.
Thank you. That's Al McNeil, one of the 5 houses destroyed here. If we've got a few moments, we'll walk up the roadway here just to show you exactly what happened. And again, to set the stage as we pull our cables up Balboa Boulevard, there was a huge water and gas main rupture here. The two were close together. And as we come around the side of the pickup truck here now, you can see where the fire is burning. Chris, we're going to step over some large asphalt chunks there, right there. And you can see where the gas flame is burning. The gas company people are here, and they told me that they have cut this off, and now it is simply the residual gas in the large gas main that continues to burn. It's been burning for 6 hours, still burning strong, but this huge hole here, in fact, Chris, do we have enough cable to get a little further? We're just about at the end of our line. This huge hole here was full of water because the water main ruptured under there, too. They finally managed to cut that off. As you can see, the roadway here, this is Balboa, above Rinaldi. The roadway cleared out all along the side here. Huge cracks and ruptures and no power in this area. 5 homes lost in addition to that pickup truck, all because of this gas main fire, which erupted about 15 minutes after the quake itself. So apparently it was ruptured, but then still no spark until 15 minutes or so afterwards. Then it caught fire. It took 5 houses with it, but there have been no injuries here on Balboa, north of Rinaldi in Granada Hills, Michael.
Did they say how long they expect the residual gas to burn up, how long it'll take?
They say it could be any minute, and it'll finally burn out because it's been going for a long time after they've shut the valves off. This is very much like shutting off water mains. We've seen in the past where when they shut off gas or water, it's not just turning off a valve as it is in your house, because you're talking about enormous volumes and tremendous pressures, and so they have to back it off gradually, or they will blow other valves and other homes upstream from the problem. So they've had to do it very carefully. And I can testify that this is an extremely hot flame because we are perhaps about almost 100 feet away, and we're getting quite a sunburn here from this. This is a very hot fire and still presents a hazard to the other houses in the area. And so fire department, police people are on that.
That's KCBS live coverage. Harry, that's in Granada Hills, the same area where that community hospital was, where we were watching this incredible drama of a burn victim, burned the lower part of his body. He needed to leave a community hospital, and KCBS sent its helicopter to pick him up and take him to the Sherman Oaks burn unit. His name is John. He was he was at home, and a propane tank blew. Presumably now he is at Sherman Oaks burn unit. The helicopter was just about to land. We'll be back with more coverage in just a moment.
Gas. When bloating, pain, and pressure tie you in knots, don't make the antacid mistake. Take this little pill instead. Maximum Strength Phazine. There's more gas relief in one Phazine soft gel than in a whole bottle of regular Maalox. All this Maalox can't get rid of gas, but with the liquid medicine in just one Phazine, the gas is gone. Take Phazine, and the gas is gone.
When I was a kid, Mom was always after me to eat right.
And that's what mothers do.
Now I'm looking out for her with Ensure. More than a vitamin supplement, Ensure is a delicious drink with all the nutrients adults need to help stay healthy, active, be energetic.
Drink Ensure as a meal.
Or in between.
You know, dear, Ensure is even recommended #1 by doctors as a source of complete, balanced nutrition.
Ensure. To your health, Mom.
Our health, dear.
For younger-looking skin, you've never seen anything like it. It was discovered at the Pond's Institute. Pond's Skin Smoothing Capsules, containing essential lipids. It retexturizes your skin in seconds. Pond's Skin Smoothing Capsules.
Because calcium is so important for strong bones, we've added a new Flintstones formula with calcium. Flintstones, now with calcium.
With the curls facing up and heap on so much cheese, salsa, refried beans, and jalapenos, you can barely lift a chip.
But thanks to new Palmolive Plus, lifting off the goo from the dish is no problem. It even gets at the stuff that was so greasy it seemed impossible. And Palmolive softens hands while you do dishes. So, before my tongue cools off, I'm already finished.
New Palmolive Plus. You cook, we'll clean.
We are back now live here at CBS News in New York. I'm Connie Chung with Harry Smith. The death toll from this earthquake that struck at 4:31 a.m. this morning is now at 16. Harry, Southern California is such a vast area. It's difficult for us to, and I'm sure for emergency crews as well, to get every place and be able to find out all the information that we need to.
It was really problematic early this morning because as daylight came and as news helicopters got into the air, there's some of the folks who were really the ones who saw some of the problems first, because with no power and with communications completely broken down, there were people who were in big trouble who were unable to communicate with their local law enforcement and fire officials to say, we've got a problem here, we've got a house collapse and we don't know if there's people alive inside or not. This is up north of Los Angeles. The epicenter, as you say, is up around the Northridge area. This is a highway that completely collapsed. Right now we want to join our owned and affiliated station, KCBS, with live coverage of this earthquake that happened at 4:31 Pacific time this morning.
But from the first aftershock. And the fortunate thing is that since these buildings did go down in part, that it happened when most people were so scared they were already outside of the building. Otherwise, it would have obviously been much, much worse here. And we are going on to Plummer Boulevard right now. If you can take a look at this building, it's another building that was spared no mercy from this quake. Again, just completely buckled, closed down. the force of this is just really incredible. And one of the things that I find particularly striking, as Linda just said, that everybody in the city seems affected to some degree, but driving around the valley, everybody is affected very directly by damage. There is some damage, it seems, everywhere you look. Obviously, in some places, the damage is greater and more tragic than in other places, but we pretty much see walls down everywhere. We see structural problems. This earthquake spared very few people in this area, and it's just been a terrible tragedy for so many people who have just lost everything with no warning. I mean, one of the things about an earthquake is that it happens on a dime, and your life completely changes, at least with a fire. Not that it's any less tragic, but you see it coming. You can take some precautions in many cases. In this case, there's no time to do anything but just get out for your lives, and that's what these people did. And fortunately, it appears nobody was injured seriously at this building, Mike and Linda.
It is just an incredible sight.
Again, we have been counting miracles this morning.
Absolutely.
It is terrible, the loss of life and the damage that we've had. It could have been, and it's cliched by now, it could have been so much worse had it not happened at 4:31.
And unfortunately, it's not over yet, and people in the City Hall areas and the officials are trying to make plans to see how the city is going to get back on its feet while we still are suffering aftershocks. Brad Good is downtown Los Angeles right now at Parker Center, the police station there. Brad, what is going on?
Well, Linda, the mayor and numerous city and county officials just got out of their Emergency Operations Center meeting. That lasted for close to 2.5 hours. They went into that meeting right after the 9 o'clock press conference when Mayor Reardon addressed the media here. It was at that 2.5-hour meeting they said they would talk to all of their departments and discuss what needs they have, assess the entire situation from all city and county departments so then they know where to go from there. At this point, Governor Pete Wilson just arrived in the city a short time ago, and we are told by Los Angeles city officials that the mayor is going on a 1-hour chopper ride with Mayor Reardon, the chief of police, the fire chief, and other city officials and state emergency officials to assess the damage. We are told that that chopper flight will be at least 1 hour. Of course, what we know now about the damage, he may be up in the air much longer than 1 hour. We are then told that Governor Wilson will be back here at the Parker Center at approximately 2 o'clock, and he will give us a news briefing on what he saw and any action that the state will be taking, of course, from then on. Linda?
Police force is on tactical alert right now. Brad, you have just come to Los Angeles, joined us here and at KCBS. We want to welcome you, but we want to say that this was an incredible welcome to Los Angeles. Tell me your personal experience in feeling this earthquake.
Well, Linda, I'm having a little audio interference, but yes, quite a, well, I don't want to say a rude awakening, but it is my welcoming to Los Angeles today, and that began as well at 4:31 this morning with many other people here in Southern California when I was literally jumped out of bed. I mean, I guess I would say I was almost pulled out of bed, and I didn't know why I was flying out of bed as my entire apartment in Toluca Lake was shaking and things were falling in my apartment. You know, you always hear about these earthquakes in California, and so I guess all along I was expecting them, but not in my first couple of days here on the job. From what I can see down here, downtown Los Angeles is fairly calm, as the mayor was calling for earlier. People seem to be helping one another. There just seems to be that resilient spirit that the mayor was talking about. Even among the media here, everyone just sort of calm, calling people, checking to see if their families are okay, helping one another with equipment, as you see in times of emergency and great tragedy, where there's just sort of that feeling of, hey, we're fortunate, we're okay, and then let's just be thankful about that and help one another. And so it's been a real shocking morning for me and quite a learning experience as well.
Yeah, Brad, thank you very much.
All right, we are back here. Connie Chung, we're here with Harry Smith. We've been watching Michael Tuck and Linda Alvarez of our KCBS station in Los Angeles. Carrie, their coverage has been excellent all morning.
Excellent. We've seen a lot of pictures from a lot of different neighborhoods out there. And as we say, as we continue our coverage here, the death toll right now is 16, as this earthquake is now exactly 7 hours old.
We'll be back with more coverage in just a moment.
This is CBS.
Have you any idea what a difference 8 pounds can make? Look at me, Kathleen Sullivan, just a few weeks ago. And here I am after just 2 weeks on Weight Watchers' revolutionary Superstart program. I can't believe it, more than 8 pounds in 2 weeks. That's incredible. If you're in a hurry to start losing weight, then you can't beat Superstart. And for me, it's not over yet. The next time you see me, there'll be even less of me. Call right now, and you'll still be able to join for only $12. Come on, it works. I'm living proof.
When you're using lots of tissues, are they soft enough?
No, never. Really blowing a lot. That's why you get a raw nose. It's really sore right around the edge.
That's why there's Ultra Soft Puffs.
Wow, really soft. Very velvety.
You see, puffs are puffed for softness that really adds up. Softness that 4 out of 5 people prefer.
Nobody uses one tissue.
I could go like this, and I didn't have any rawness. Puffs does not offend your nose. I'm going to change to Puffs.
Ultra Soft Puffs, softest on your nose through all the blows.
This morning my nose said thank you.
Here's another idea someone sent in to help folks tell our Idaho potatoes from those others. Made entirely out of French fries. I still think we're better off with the seal on the bag, so look for it, because if it's not from Idaho, it's just a spud.
Back in the snow again. How long and how much? Stay with Channel 10.
Good afternoon. I'm Connie Chung here with Harry Smith of CBS This Morning. We are continuing our coverage of the earthquake that hit Southern California at 4:31 a.m. Pacific time, 6.6 on the Richter scale. 16 deaths reported so far. The hospitals in the area have been overwhelmed. Many injuries. A state of emergency is in effect in Los Angeles. The governor is going to be touring. The mayor will be touring the area. The quake did hit at 4:30 a.m. Pacific time. People were not on the streets, fortunately. Had it hit in the early morning hours of rush hour or in the late afternoon, it could have been even worse. Freeways collapsed. There have been fires all over Southern California. The epicenter is Northridge. We've been told that seismologists believe that the epicenter is Northridge. The most serious earthquake that occurred in 1971 was centered in Sylmar,
which is not all that far from the epicenter of this one either.
This is a gas line, a gas main explosion. Harry, you watched this live this morning.
Yeah, in the dark hours before dawn, we saw this thing explode, and as it exploded, it torched about a half a dozen houses right nearby. This is a common sight throughout Los Angeles this morning, where you see a gas main blow, and then the fire hydrants were so shaken that they tops exploded off, and the water was pouring out all over the streets. If we can we talk to Chris Scholes for a minute or two here? Chris Scholes is a seismologist with Columbia University. He's been with us throughout the morning. For folks who may be just tuning in their favorite daytime programs here on CBS and saying, what is going on? We're talking about an earthquake that is 6.6 on the Richter scale. It is not on the San Andreas Fault. Tell us about this earthquake, how important it is, how big it is, and how it fits into the bigger picture of things people are afraid of in Southern California.
Well, if we can look at this monitor, the little lines here are faults that have been mapped. But this earthquake, as you can see, which is centered right here, ruptured a region, essentially, which I've circled now, on a unmapped fault. It's a horizontal fault that lies between these other mapped faults. We knew that those kind of faults exist, and this earthquake ruptured a region about 20 kilometers in diameter right under the San Fernando Valley, whereas the 1971 earthquake ruptured up here in the mountains, in the San Gabriel Mountains.
This is the earthquake that killed more than 60 people.
Yeah, so they ruptured different faults, but they're part of the same fault system that underlies the whole LA Basin region.
Now, Dr. Scholes, when we say that the earthquake was 6.6, does that mean that this area right here that you circled actually felt the greatest, and it was incrementally less as they
that's
went
not
out?
the felt region. That's the part of the fault that actually slipped during the earthquake. It slipped on an area that big underneath the San Fernando Valley. It actually slipped 3 or 4 feet on that large of a region, and that all occurred in something like 10 seconds.
And what followed? I mean, there are many people who believe that what they felt was 30 seconds, a minute and a half.
Well, what would happen is underneath this basin, which is all full of soft sediments, the waves go out and they bounce, reverberate back and forth. And so the actual shaking time is longer than the time that actually initiated, of the motion that actually initiated the shaking.
One of the areas of concern is up around Northridge. They know that there are 5 people dead there. That is pretty near the epicenter, as you say, Dr. Schultz. And we know that there are rescue teams, even as we speak, going through some of these apartment complexes, looking for survivors. This is a process that's going to go on for some time. The death toll, as of right now, is still what, 16?
16. Dr. Schultz, there have been 6 major aftershocks reported. The intensity is, of course, less, but the damage could easily be as great.
Well, the aftershocks are, of course, much smaller in magnitude. The 2 largest were magnitude 5s. It's possible you could get one as large as 5.5. So they're much smaller energetically. The problem is they can cause a lot of damage to buildings that have already suffered structural damage.
All right, Dr. Schultz, thank you so much for your help here throughout this morning and this afternoon. We want to go to the National Earthquake Center in Golden, Colorado, to a man who has watched these earthquakes for many, many years. Dr. Waverly Person is with us on the line right now. Dr. Person, how you doing?
Doing fine.
What's the latest there? We know there are, what, about 5 or 6 pretty significant aftershocks. What are you watching there right now?
Well, we're watching one of our stations here that are showing the intensity of the aftershocks here. They have quieted down somewhat, but every 2 to 3 minutes we see something in the magnitude 4 range. And we are concerned about earthquakes that may be up to magnitude 4.5 or going into the 5 range that could cause additional damage from the main shock shaking from at 6.6 on the Richter scale. So we are very concerned right now as to how strong these aftershocks may be in the next 24 hours.
And exactly how many aftershocks have you recorded so far?
Hundreds. If you can just look at this record right here, if they can beam over here and look at this record, you can see what happened went from the main shock. This was the main shock here, and look at the 4 hours after that, and you can see what the aftershock pattern looked like. This is continuous aftershocks after the main shock, and they are continuing as we speak.
It's curious to us. I mean, you live with this sort of stuff every day, but these kinds of graphs are certainly news to us. Can you explain a little bit more what you were just pointing to there? It looks like a nightmare.
Yes, only thing that, having worked with this a number of years, the only thing that I can pick from this record is the P arrival right here from the main shock. Everything else just goes crazy. All of those are aftershocks, and we have to move away from the epicenter to pick the P's on the other. This is approximately 60 miles from the epicenter, and the only thing that I could pick would be the P for the initial shock. In other words, the aftershocks were continuously going since the main shock.
One of the most frustrating things, I'm sure, is everyone's inability to predict an earthquake. Does today's earthquake tell you anything about the future?
No, it doesn't. That's the very unfortunate thing. We are not able to precisely predict earthquakes, and we figure in many cases we thought that we were well on the way to predict, and then something come up and shoot the whole idea. So we are still working on it, but we are not there as yet. The only thing that we can look at is look at areas that have had earthquakes very frequently and try to prepare for the earthquake and be ready when it comes. But as far as being able to precisely predict, we are a long ways from that.
If you don't mind, Dr. Person, I'm going to ask our camera person there to see if they could pan over to look at some of your needles there. When we were with you earlier this morning, they were really rocking.
Over here, please. Yeah, this is the station you were looking at earlier this morning, and you can see the pin here. It's somewhat quiet right now, although we're having aftershocks, but they're very small. They're probably less than 3, but you can see down in here some of these have been fairly large. Some of them have been in the 4 range, a lot of them in the 3.5 range, but it'll go for 3 or 4 minutes without having very many aftershocks, and boom, we get another one that's in the magnitude 4 range. But this is our closest station as we speak, as they're recording the aftershocks in the area.
Right. Thank you. Waverly Person, Director of the National Earthquake Center. Let's go back to KCBS Live.
Here, but
but the major break is right here at Venice Boulevard. I've just been told by a couple of Caltrans workers that if there is any saving grace at all, what happened to the interstate here is that it happened at this location. Had it happened more farther downtown, we would have really had disruption of course, the country's busiest freeway. But they figure it can be repaired probably 6 to 8 months. And it's ironic they were telling us about the steel retrofitting project that's been going along the freeways, the interstates over the past couple of years. This area here had not been retrofitted. So as you can see, here's the result of that. Ramon, if we can go ahead and take a look at this steel beam under here. Freeway just literally came down on top of that support. Had that been retrofitted, they really believe that this area would have been spared this severe devastation. Here's another problem you can see developing here. There's just a lot of sightseers around the area, and along with the sightseers, they're also picking up souvenirs of Interstate 10. They said, heck, we paid for it, we're going to get a little piece of it. And that's another thing about fixing this. There are many state highways that have been affected here this morning, but again, I-10 is a federal interstate highway, so Mike and Linda, it'll be fixed a lot quicker than the others.
Better than we thought.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting that the retrofitting of the freeways and the structural repair and I guess prevention they're doing that now. It's ongoing. So there's still areas that are very, very vulnerable.
There certainly are, and in the days and the weeks ahead, as you're sitting there in traffic, because you've been routed around one of these areas and it's taking you so much longer to get to work, I doubt if you will have too many reservations about your tax dollars going to retrofit these freeways.
A very vivid picture.
Here you see what happens when you don't.
Right. And this is, although it is amazing to think that it's only going to take about 6 to 8 months to get this back going. You're seeing some, just some little headlines here on the screen to help you know what's going on, what we do know now. Of course, major power outages throughout the Southern California, Los Angeles area. Major gas leaks. They are the reason for most of the fires that we have seen and been showing you, especially in the San Fernando Valley around Northridge. A live picture right here of the nation's busiest freeway cut down.
Although you were talking about this retrofitting, even that is no guarantee. We've had a couple of freeways collapse this morning that were fairly new freeways. The 14 collapsed at the 5, the 118 freeway collapsed.
And those were east-west freeways.
Those were east, and those were the ones that were the most vulnerable, although the seismic expert who joined us a little while ago said even in the best conditions, our freeways and our buildings, there you see the seismicam going crazy again. We're having another aftershock. I was keeping
track of the aftershocks, but they got to be so many I just stopped counting.
Just threw that away. You had them written down a little while ago. But the seismic expert told us that even our best buildings and freeways are vulnerable. And those are the newer ones, of course, but those that are not as new, middle-aged or older buildings, those are really, really dangerous in the event of an earthquake and unpredictable. And we've asked a couple of a structural engineer and a seismic expert now, what is the target for these buildings and these bridges to withstand?
And they can't give a specific number.
They really can't.
No.
It's
the goal is so that it won't collapse.
Inexact science, although no one has agreed yet this morning that what we saw, those apartments collapse, and those were apartments built after 1991, those are they in Northridge or
yes.
No, in Reseda?
The ones that Harvey were.
One's in Northridge, I think, and one is in Reseda. They've collapsed down a complete floor. Nobody
that was the
said,
one in Northridge. And, yeah.
Nobody said they should have collapsed. They shouldn't have.
All right. We're going to go back out to Fillmore. Now, Fillmore, again, is in Ventura County, which is northwest of Los Angeles, northwest of Northridge, where the epicenter was. An older community, farming community, but there was some damage there. Linda, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. There was a lot of damage here. As you say, this is an older community, a lot of older brick structures. If you take a look around, this is the old downtown section of Fillmore, and this was hit pretty hard. You can see a lot of the older brick structures did not do well. This whole downtown area has been closed. What the city officials are doing first is going out to the homes and checking residences to make sure that people are safe to stay in their homes. And then they will get to the business district. So for the moment, no one is able to come in here at all. Everything is still very unstable. There were quite a few injuries in the Fillmore area. Fortunately, though, nothing too serious. We're told 40 to 50 civilian injuries, mostly minor to moderate injuries. We showed you a little bit earlier. If you saw a hotel that partially collapsed, an apartment hotel where many of those farm workers that you mentioned live, and somehow no one was seriously injured in that hotel. The side of it was just peeled open like a can opener. So the situation now is that there's a lot of property damage in Fillmore, but luckily not a lot of serious injury. There was a fire at a mobile home park near here. A gas line exploded and one mobile home was lost, another damaged, but again, no serious injuries. Linda?
Looking down the middle of the street, Linda, it looks like the cars are being kept away from the area where that was heavily hit.
Yes, they have. They have both sides of this main street here cordoned off and cordons, the crime scene tape around many of the other intersections and buildings that are damaged. It looks like a ghost town here. No one's walking through the area except for press and fire department personnel, that sort of thing. Everyone they're looking around the edges, but no one's allowed into the main area.
That's what we've noticed a number of locations, Linda, that people are being kept well back. It's very quiet. It's eerie.
It is. It's unexpected, perhaps.
It is. We can tell you now that the official death toll now stands at 18. One half of those people, 9 people, we know died in that apartment house collapse in Northridge.
Right. Where they were able to rescue a couple of dozen people.
But there were 50 units on that ground floor that literally collapsed. That had 2 floors collapse on top of them. That they were able to get anybody
over. Yeah, it was an
out
amazing
alive was amazing.
We saw them extricate one man from underneath the rubble. They had to literally take chunk of wood by chunk of wood to get to clear away,
Using
and then they
their
hands,
up
with pieces
had a
of,
big chainsaw, doing anything to get that rubble and debris out of the way.
Very slowly.
Yes.
Very, very slowly. And then when they did pull him out on the stretcher, people were gathering around and trying to clear away to move. There was applause, which was certainly a feeling that we all shared.
And he was awake and alert. And that's one of the ways they knew where to go, because they were going, they had very little space to work with, but they were getting down on their hands and knees and shouting in this rubble. Now remember, it was a 3-story building. It's now a 2-story building. The first floor is gone. Shouting to see if anybody is alive, and occasionally they'd get a response back. And then they would well, not frantically, but as quickly as they could, and they had to be careful because there's danger of this collapsing further.
With the aftershocks and the structural damage already?
Pulled out 20 people.
Amazing. Joe Avalar is standing by now at Caltech, where all of the experts are gathered and have been telling us what's going on. What's the latest, Joe?
What we have right now, actually, is Lou Phelps from Southern California Edison, who can give us a partial update on the outages. Now, they have outages in the San Fernando Valley, Ventura, and Santa Barbara. That's just served by SoCal Edison. There are other outages that are served by DWP. As far as Southern California Edison customers are concerned, there are about 500,000 people without power. With me now, Lou Phelps. Tell me, why are they without power? When can they expect to have power? And very importantly, you said, for people in that area, turn things off now.
Let's address the last question first. For anyone who's in the area affected by outages in Ventura, Santa Barbara, northern San Fernando Valley area, turn off all of your lights, even though they're not on now. Turn off the switches, unplug appliances, so that when we do begin to restore service, there will be enough power to go around to as many people as possible.
Channel 9. When are we going to get service?
In terms of restoring power, we expect to begin to be able to restore power early this afternoon. It will be a gradual increments as we put one circuit and then another back into operation.
If everything goes power in the first place, what happened?
Well, there's a major switching center in Valencia which received very heavy damage this morning from the earthquake. It's near the epicenter, and a lot of the switching gear and the transmission lines were damaged. We've been working feverishly to repair that, and as soon as we can make the first connection, we'll be able to start bringing power back into the affected area.
You said you lost 2 generating stations as well?
We have 2 two generating stations in Ventura County right on the coast. Both of those are shut down right now, and we will not be able to restart them until we get electric power back into the system, because they need some power to run the fans and the pumps, which are required to generate more power.
Okay, now I imagine your advisory, although you're talking for Southern California Edison customers, also works for DWP customers. Everybody without power right now, turn off your appliances, turn off your lights, turn off everything basically but your refrigerator, so that when power does return by mid-afternoon or late afternoon or early tonight or whenever, when power does return, that way it won't overload the system and it all shuts back down. Right?
Keep the use of power as low as possible. That certainly applies to anyone whose
on your
power
audio
is
mic. I'm going to have the lady set
now
up.
Tell us what's happening with DWP. You can tell us a little bit of information. About 90% of their customers are out?
We understand from some contact with them that about 90% of the DWP customers are without power at the moment, and they're working very hard, but they've got major damage to facilities in the San Fernando Valley, just as we do.
So we've got problems in the city of Los Angeles, much of the San Fernando Valley, and what your service area is, San Fernando Valley, Ventura, and Santa Barbara, and hopefully by mid-afternoon, 3:30 or sometime afterwards, people should begin to see the lights come back on.
That's true for Edison. I unfortunately do not have any information about what DWP is able to do. We know they're working feverishly to get the circuits restored, but you'll have to talk to one of their people to find out.
Okay, Lou Phelps of Southern California Edison, thank you very much for joining us. That's the latest from here in South Tech. We're actually going to get an update, if you can stay with us, from Dr. Kate Hutton. As you can see right behind me, they're trying to do a mic check right now. Let me fill you in on some of the basics. As you've heard, this is now called the Northridge earthquake. It's the biggest in the area, in the LA basin, in some 23 years. And the aftershocks, so far we've had 2 magnitude 5, we've had 6 of magnitude 4, and we'll be looking at aftershocks for a number of years. But over time, the size of those aftershocks and the frequency of those aftershocks will diminish. The other thing to point out, and I heard Michael Tuck pointed out to you earlier, is particularly if you live in a damaged building, earthquake damages have a cumulative effect. That's very important. So you may see some cracks now, but over time, with more aftershocks, there may be more damage, and in fact, what may not have fallen now or fallen yet may fall at some other point. So it's very important to keep that in mind. But as we say, we're waiting for the latest here. What they're talking about now is an earthquake, as we know, in the Northridge area. And what they're talking about, not to get too technical for you, but a fault that they did not know before. It's a fault that's below the ground. They call it a blind fault. They don't believe that there was actually any surface breaking with this earthquake. For instance, you remember in the Landers earthquake of just a short time ago, that was a much larger earthquake, some 50 times greater. There was a huge rift in the ground that we all showed you. Well, they do not believe this actually happened in Northridge. They don't believe that the earthquake actually broke through the ground. By the way, that Landers earthquake was some 50 times bigger, 50 times more powerful than the earthquake in the San Fernando Valley. Why so much less damage in the Landers earthquake and the Big Bear aftershock than what happened here in the San Fernando Valley? Very simply, there aren't very many people who live there, and that's what they're saying. The problem is not the size of the earthquake, but the population area of the earthquake. We're waiting now for Dr.
And there you have it, 500 people without power in the area of San Fernando. Los Angeles Airport was closed for a time. Planes had to be diverted, but once again it is open. AT&T was reporting that it had lost some long-distance service in 4 area codes, but we will see whether or not that switching center will be restored. Long-distance companies blocked calls in some areas, and we're appealing to the public to reduce calls. So if you have relatives, you should try not to call, but if you must, you may not be able to get through. We'll be back with more coverage in just a moment.
These are all good cleaners, but did you know that not one of them disinfects? So you don't get your home totally clean until you use Lysol deodorizing cleaner. Lysol cleans and kills germs without any extra effort. Germs can be anywhere, so don't do part of the job. Lemon Fresh Lysol deodorizing cleaner cleans and disinfects.
Comfy, huh? Yes, Mom. Because you weren't last night. Man, when you were constipated. What? Aren't you glad they came out with these Phillips gel caps?
Unlike X-Lax, Phillips combines its laxative plus stool softener in an easy-to-swallow gel cap.
We didn't have gel caps when I was your age. What did you talk about?
Chubb's Stackables brand baby wipes. Spectacular fun for your little one. Matthew Morris made a mountain. Karen Keller carries her crayons. Chubb's Stackables. Thick, strong baby wipes in bright, reusable containers. Frankie Flynn finished his sport. Chubb's Stackables wipes. Spectacular fun for your little one.
If you have problems falling asleep,
Now your world is about to change. Introducing Unisom Sleep Gels with a special liquid center. They're maximum strength, so they're as effective as anything you can get without a prescription. They help you fall asleep fast and wake up refreshed. If you have problems falling asleep, try new maximum strength Unisom Sleep Gels. A remarkable new idea from Unisom.
They look like them, they taste like them, but they don't move like them. Lifesavers Gummy Savers, made with real fruit for great fruit taste, so you can move to a different beat.
You have a choice. Not all douches are made to work with the woman's body. This one is. Summer's Eve is pH balanced and hypoallergenic, so it's formulated to work with your body. The Summer's Eve feeling, clean, fresh, naturally better.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Connie Chung here with Harry Smith. Coverage of the earthquake in Southern California. It hit at 4:31 a.m. Pacific time, 6.6 on the Richter scale. 18 people now dead. The death toll continues to climb. Earlier, there was a report of a train derailment, a train reportedly carrying sulfuric acid. We have some tape of that now. Harry, you were watching this earlier on CBS this morning.
Yeah, this one had everybody scared. It's a 64-car freight train, and we do know that there were a number of cars in this train carrying sulfuric acid. At first, when it was reported, there was a fear that some of those cars had ruptured. This train that derailed there, the 64-car train, is around Chatsworth in Northridge. Northridge, as we see, is really one of the areas that is really getting hit from this earthquake. As it turns out, no confirmation of leaks or injuries. Another one of the sort of a miracle twist in this story. Here's this train wreck, 64 cars in the train, all these cars of sulfuric acid, and not a drop spilled. So some very lucky folks over there.
All right, Bill Lagatute is in Los Angeles. Let's go to him now for an update. Bill?
Most of us, I think, Connie, were lucky considering the widespread effect of this earthquake, which may have been even greater in devastation had it not been such a shallow quake. We heard the seismologist discussing this earlier. This one was fairly shallow in terms of how far beneath the surface it was centered, and therefore the damage was not as great as it might have been. Still, throughout the Los Angeles area, scenes like the ones you're about to see are being replayed over and over again. This is in Granada Hills, which is in the northern part of the San Fernando Valley, a major population center in Los Angeles, and in the center of the screen, you see the flames from broken gas mains. When the earth moved, lines ruptured, sparks started fires, and many of them continue to burn. This is an apartment complex or some kind of commercial structure, I think, that has collapsed. Well, this is the Kaiser Permanente office building in Granada Hills, California. Fortunately, this quake hit very early in the morning and no one was at work, but you can see the enormity of the damage to the structure itself. Keep in mind, this community is very near the epicenter. A lot of the damage is greater the closer you are to the center of the earthquake. Here's another look at street scene fire coming from a gas main, also in Granada Hills. And in nearby Northridge, we're told that there's a rescue underway. A parking structure collapsed, and a man who was working on the bottom level of it, a street cleaner of some kind, was caught in the middle of this. They tell us he is alive. They've run an air hose down to him. They're using timbers and airbags to try and lift some of the crushing debris off of him, and at the moment we're told he is still alive. These are pictures of homes, fences, back walls have collapsed. Well, when the sun came up, many people were in for a very, very rude surprise when they looked outside. A lot of the damage depends on the kind of soil on which your house is built. The softer the soil, the more damage tends to be. Here's a homeowner describing the shock he saw when he woke up and looked out at the backyard this morning. Again, as you said, the death toll here is 18, and half of those deaths took place in an apartment building in the San Fernando Valley that collapsed. 9 people dead so far there. The rescue teams are looking for survivors in the rubble of what once was a large populated apartment building in the northern San Fernando Valley.
Bill, you have covered the fires. You've covered so many natural disasters in the Los Angeles area. I mean, I tell you, Southern California just gets hit again and again by these disasters. But an earthquake is one of those that is so unexpected. A fire you begin to hear about. Brush fires certainly hit very quickly. but this earthquake is in a special category of its own.
It is because of the violence of it. I mean, it shakes you out of your sleep, it throws you out of bed, and you don't know how big it's going to be until it's over. These are pictures from Sherman Oaks, California, which is also in the San Fernando Valley, about 5 miles from the epicenter of the quake, and this is busy Ventura Boulevard, which is a main thoroughfare there, and there were a lot of fires in some of the small businesses there. And as you can see, fire trucks were out all over the city trying to put them out. You know, you talk about the disasters that those of us living here in California face. We like to think that we live on the edge. Literally, we live on the edge of the continent, and sometimes we live on the edge by choosing to live here in the face of all of the blows that Mother Nature deals us from time to time. We do learn to live with it, and sometimes we don't take it as seriously as we should. I'll tell you a case in point. 3 out of 4 of the homes that were damaged in this earthquake today were not insured. And earthquake insurance is relatively inexpensive in California, yet most residents choose not to buy it. They won't be able to for at least another month now, because you can't buy earthquake insurance immediately after a quake. But I'd venture to say that 30 days from now, Californians will be back to our attitudes as normal, that this is one of the things we live with. It's the price we pay for living in paradise. You know, it's about 75 degrees here right now. That's why people live here. We love it.
Bill, let me jump in here for a second. You said something earlier this afternoon that I think bears repeating, because we keep showing picture after picture after picture of devastation, of train derailments, of buildings collapse, of fires burning out of control, of houses falling off of hillsides. You said something a little while ago, an hour or so ago, when we talked to you on television, that much of Los Angeles is in fine shape. Why don't you just make that point again?
Well, I mean, let me put it this way. You go in any neighborhood in Los Angeles right now, and you're likely to see some effect from this earthquake. But most likely, it's going to be a crack in a wall, some plaster fallen, maybe a brick wall that has been shifted off its base. Inside homes, glasses may have fallen off shelves. A mirror or two may have fallen. But as you said, by and large, the city is standing and up and running. One of the dangers of this business is we do tend to show the worst pictures of all to the nation, and it bears repeating that much of Los Angeles is alive and well. If you've got relatives here and you've been trying to call, you may have experienced some difficulty in getting through. Some of the phone lines are still not up and running, but the phone company tells us they should be by later this afternoon. There are still power outages in the city, 500,000 people without power, but this is a big, big place. 500,000 people is a small portion of the population. They hope to have power on by later today, too.
All right, thanks very much, Bill Lagattuta, but I have got to say, from the pictures that we have seen, it's tens and maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in damage that has occurred there just in the last 7.5 hours since the earthquake hit. 6.6 on the Richter scale. 18 dead is now the death toll in the earthquake in Los Angeles. We're going to take a break and let our stations along the line identify themselves, and our coverage of the earthquake in Los Angeles will continue in just a second.
This is CBS.
I'm so bad, that's why I'm glad you're so good.
Are you bad about wanting rich desserts? Then you're going to love Smart Style from Mrs. Smith's. Sinfully delicious, yet they're made with sensible ingredients that can be part of a smart way to eat. Mrs. Smith's Smart Style desserts. Go ahead, live well, eat well, have dessert.
I'm so bad, that's why I'm glad you're so good.
Was I surprised when my dentist told me I had a tartar problem? Doctor, I said, I brush with baking soda and peroxide. He said, those aren't tartar-fighting ingredients, so your teeth aren't as clean as they could be. Use Tartar Control Crest. But doctor, I said, shouldn't I use baking soda and peroxide for my gums? Pete, he said, they're not proven to do anything special for your gums either. So I used Crest. And my tartar problem? No problem.
Tartar Control Crest. It's proven to fight tartar buildup. It's the dentist's choice.
No more surprises for me.
This winter, hundreds of older citizens will be victims of abuse. Abuse that will be inflicted by the cold. If you need financial help heating your home, call us. Because all we want to turn off this winter is the cold.
Back in the snow again. How long and how much? Stay with Channel 10.
This is a CBS News special report continuing coverage of the Los Angeles earthquake. I'm Connie Chung along with Harry Smith in New York and a team of CBS News correspondents in Los Angeles. The death toll from the earthquake is now up to at least 18. That includes 9 people killed when an apartment building collapsed in Northridge, right at the epicenter of the quake. Hundreds of other people have been injured. The quake struck before dawn this morning, about 7.5 hours ago, toppling homes and roadways, touching off floods and fires, and knocking out electrical power. The earthquake registered 6.6 on the Richter scale, and aftershocks are continuing. We had reported that there were at least 6 major aftershocks. This is an earlier picture of a gas line rupture. There have been 6 major aftershocks, but when we talk to the folks who are tracking this, there have been actually hundreds. Bill Lagatuda is in Los Angeles. Bill, can you give us an update?
Well, just another reminder, Connie, I think that this was not the big earthquake. The one that we all fear is coming. Scientists tell us it will hit sometime along one of the major faults within the next 50 years. This was not the big one. This was 6.6 on the Richter scale, and though it was felt throughout the region and did considerable damage, caused many deaths, the possibility, the likelihood, the certainty that another much bigger one will occur sometime within the next 50 years is still with us. But the damage here was enormous, and throughout the area, homes have been cracked and tumbled. Apartment complexes have been crushed. There are rescue efforts underway, and fires still burn. 3 of the major freeways in our area have been damaged, including Interstate 10, which was cut in half near the Mid-City area. Portions of Highway 14 in an area known as the Antelope Valley collapsed on Interstate 5, which is the main north-south highway running throughout California. And in the northern San Fernando Valley, portions of the 118 or the Simi Valley Freeway buckled and broke. The good news about all this is that it happened so very early in the morning, 4:31 to be exact. Combine that with the fact that this is a legal holiday and that many people were not going to be out and about today at all, and you can see that that was perhaps the only saving grace in all of this. Had this happened during the height of the rush hour or during midday, the fatalities would certainly have been much higher. The damage is unthinkable.
Bill, there is another little bit of good news. The U.S. Geological Survey seismologist, a woman named Lucy Jones at the California Institute of Technology, says that the quake was too far away from the San Andreas fault, whereby it could have triggered a north-south fault line earthquake. She also says that they've been looking into whether that swarm of earthquakes, which you had actually mentioned earlier this morning, there were about 12 in the Santa Monica area recorded, but they were small earthquakes just recently, whether or not there's any link, any connection between today's earthquake and those smaller ones that even you had felt earlier.
Yes, this was on a small unmapped fault in the San Fernando Valley. It was not along the San Andreas. I'll tell you, that's the #1 concern when we feel one of these things. Was that the big one? Was it along the San Andreas Fault? Because we know what could happen. These are pictures, again, from Sylmar, California. This is in the northern portion of the San Fernando Valley, and this looks like a burst water main of some kind. This is what happens when these huge plates in the earth move. Everything that's buried underneath it, all of the infrastructure moves along with it. Pipes crack and burst, and water goes shooting very high in the air. Also, gas mains break, and there are a lot of fires still going right now.
Another seismologist with the U.S. Geological Survey said that the mountains of the San Fernando Valley were actually pushed closer together because of the earthquake. The mountain ranges are now higher and closer together. It's very difficult for these experts to be able to determine what's going to happen next, what effect it's going to have, or even to be able to predict. I mean, that's the most frustrating part. For the experts. They cannot predict, and they have a great difficulty in explaining why an earthquake occurred at the particular time it did.
Yeah, we know a great deal, Connie, after the fact of an earthquake, despite all of the best minds of science, and we've got them here, seismologists in Southern California, still have not been able to figure out a way to predict them. But you're quite right, the Santa Monica mountain range is a little bit higher this afternoon. San Fernando Valley is a little bit lower. There's a constant pressure. There are 2 huge plates of the Earth, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. They're moving counter to one another all the time. And every now and then there's a little slippage that occurs. That's what we call an earthquake.
All right, Bill Agatun in Los Angeles, thanks very much. If you have loved ones, friends, family in Southern California, you are probably frustrated right now. Long-distance calling to Southern California has been almost impossible today. Even before AT&T reported the damage and power failure, the company had instituted a computerized network control trying to limit the number of calls coming into the Los Angeles area. Area codes affected 213-310-805 and 818. Very likely, if you are to call those numbers right now, you are going to get a recording saying the call cannot be completed because of the earthquake. I guess the best thing we can tell you is to continue to try as people try to put things back together out there in the Los Angeles area. Let's get a report, further report on the earthquake and what's happened in Southern California right now from reporter Terry Anzer.
The major earthquake, registering a 6.6 on the Richter scale, struck before dawn, collapsing buildings, buckling freeways, kindling fires, and knocking out power across vast areas. The quake, centered in the San Fernando Valley, shook buildings from San Diego to Los Angeles. Californians were stunned.
You were trapped in there?
And some guys came off the street and took the dressers and things off of me. Everything's gone.
Officials mobilized disaster services, and both Los Angeles Mayor Richard Riordan and California Governor Pete Wilson declared states of emergency. President Clinton dispatched James Lee Witt, head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
FEMA has had a lot of challenges this year, what with the 500-year flood in the Middle West and the fires in Southern California, but the good news is I think they're well organized and ready to deal with this.
And the death toll is rising. In Reseda, at least 6 people were killed as an apartment building collapsed. At least 4 people died of quake-related heart attacks. Fires were sparked by exploding gas mains and downed electrical wires. The hardest hit areas were to the northwest of L.A., including Northridge, Sherman Oaks, and North Hollywood. A reported 70 homes were destroyed in Sylmar. Most businesses were closed, and downtown buildings were being checked for structural damage. Major highways were closed by the damage, and officials urged motorists to stay off the roads. The fact that the quake occurred in the early morning when there were few motorists on the road was fortunate. A freight train derailed in the San Fernando Valley, 16 of the cars carrying sulfuric acid, creating another concern. Although not as strong as some quakes in recent years, this one was unusually destructive because of its location in such a heavily populated area.
There were earlier reports of looting, but that has subsided, but the National Guard has been called out, Harry. That was Terry Anzer with a report from Los Angeles. We'll be back with more coverage in just a moment.
Hey, gang, catch this! There's a new kind of taste, a new kind of flavor, a new kind of orange, you just gotta savor. Carefree, risk-free, struggle-free, regularity. It's new, orange flavored Baylight. Huh? Daily fiber therapy. Fiber? Fiber? Fiber?
Introducing the clean, crisp taste of, that's right, fiber, from the makers of Maalox. If only all fiber tasted this good.
Jane Powell for Polident.
I have a fresh solution for denture odor. Minty Double Action Polident. Each double action tablet controls denture odor and cleans even tough stains. Minty Double Action Polident, the fresh solution for denture odor.
Where will you be when your laxative starts working? Where will you be? With Fleet brand glycerin suppositories, there's no worry. Fleet works when you want it to, in minutes. For fast, predictable relief, trust Fleet. It's predictable.
Introducing new improved Lysol toilet bowl cleaner with a formula so powerful it's like having a brush in a bottle.
Oh, that's better. Is the coast clear? Yeah, look out!
This kind of power makes cleaning your toilet easier than ever before. Improved Lysol toilet bowl cleaner. It's like having a brush in a bottle.
A new beginning deserves a beautiful finish. Polycrylic protective finish from Minwax. Unlike ordinary finishes, polycrylic dries crystal clear in no time and cleans up with water. Minwax Polycrylic, a new beginning deserves a beautiful new finish. Minwax Polycrylic, today's way to keep wood beautiful.
Lysol spray use number 32, that thing that died in your gym bag. Use number 72, the busiest seat in the house. Use number 17, Duke's Little Adventure. Lysol disinfectant spray. There's nothing this can't do.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. I'm Connie Chung here with Harry Smith of CBS This Morning. The death toll in this earthquake in California has now risen to 21, 12 in that collapse of an apartment building. The quake registered 6.6 on the Richter scale, hit at 4:31 a.m. Pacific time. With us now, Kimberly Hart. First, we'll go to some KCBS coverage. This is Mark Dunn, the helicopter pilot for the KCBS helicopter, overlooking an area of Los Angeles, which I'm sure they will identify for us in just a moment. It is Granada Hills. Thank you. Let's pick up with Mark Dunn.
Homeowners, as well as firefighters, they've tried to contain the damage as much as possible. Of course, up here in the air, we can't really feel it, but I would assume that you're still experiencing some major aftershocks down on the ground, and so everybody still must be aware.
One of the things that we were able to see from the live pictures from our Chopper 2 and our Air 2 was the dust, and not only the smoke from the fires, but the dust that looked like smoke from the many aftershocks. And that was very, very visible once light broke this morning, but right now it looks like it's calmed down. Another fear was the Santa Ana's coming up this morning, but that didn't seem to happen. You didn't notice that either, did you, Mark?
Well, you know, we saw this morning I was up on downtown in the area where I was when the earthquake occurred. I was up on the roof of the building, and there was smoke ringing the whole Los Angeles basin. Today, when I was driving back out here to Van Nuys to hook up with this helicopter, get back up in the air, we were on our way out here, and we did see some of that, what you described, some of that smoke ringing the outer mountains. Of course, that dust and those rock slides are going to keep occurring as long as there's aftershocks. There's been ground loosened up on the upper slopes. It's going to fall down. I think Chopper 2 was showing you some pictures earlier of one of the reservoirs and the dams in the area where the evidence of the rock slides and the landslides was quite evident for the mass amount of smoke, which looked like smoke, but it's really dust rising up from those temblors.
Yeah, we have both helicopters in the air now, Air 2, where you just heard Mark Dunn, and also Chopper 2 with Bob Turr, and there's the view of Bob. What's new up there where you are, Bob?
Well, we had some exciting moments. We were called in by the Granada Hills Hospital people. They had a burn victim, with 32% burns, second and third degree burns to his upper torso. Now, he had to be transported to Granada Hills, from Granada Hills Hospital to the Sherman Oaks burn ward. It was critical that he get there quickly. We were able to fly on in there, landed in the parking lot, and picked up the patient. Now, we know him as John. He's a 59-year-old male. He had terrible burns. He was inside his home when a propane tank blew up literally in his face. Fortunately, he didn't breathe any of those superheated gases. He was burned very badly, however, and we brought him into the Sherman Oaks burn ward. Now, I spoke to Dr. Richard Grossman, the director of burn ward at Sherman Oaks, and he said that the quick transport has made a big difference and that he looks like he's going to do just fine, although he will have scarring, but his prognosis is very, very good. In terms of the condition of the LA Basin at this point, things are looking very, very good. Things are looking actually excellent in terms of the fires. In terms of open flame, very few spots where we're actually seeing open flame. The residual fog and haze still lingers from the fires, and at this point, we still are facing those aftershocks. Now, the 14 freeway collapsed on the 5 freeway. That's still a major problem, especially with aftershocks. Now, we also looked at the area of Pacific Coast Highway from Chautauqua to Temescal, heavy landslides, including losing the bedroom of one structure at Chautauqua and Pacific Coast Highway. Also, on Channel Road, several restaurants were terrible. Sorry about that. We break up every once in a while. Make a right turn about 30 degrees. Anyway, Channel Road had substantial damage to several restaurants, including volleyball players. St. John Smith's restaurant was heavily destroyed as well. Back to you.
All right, that is such good news to hear about that gentleman that we know only as John. By the way, we have tried to call the Sherman Oaks Burn Center where you took him a little earlier. We still have not gotten an update on his condition, but time so critically important in a case like this. I believe your helicopter flight to get him from the community hospital where they didn't have adequate treatment to the burn center where he could get that was less than 5 minutes. And how long would it have taken it by car to get him there, Bob?
Oh, with the freeways and the roads the way they are now, it could have been 45, 50 minutes. And really, you know, they talk about the golden hour, and you really got to get a patient quickly from one hospital to where he can get that advanced medical care. And fortunately, I guess we were in the right place at the right time.
It's especially important with burn patients where their loss of fluids and the shock. And actually, he was pretty alert, though. He was able to talk to you, wasn't he, Bob?
Yeah, he was very lucid. The man, fortunately, didn't breathe in any of those superheated gases. But really, the work and really the trauma starts setting in over the next 48 hours, and then they have to worry about infection and replacing the fluid that was lost. As you're right, you lose a lot of fluid in burns, and you need to replenish those fluids. Also, you need antibiotics, you need skin grafts, you need that advanced care, including they use a special treatment over at that hospital that provides 100% oxygen in a hyperbaric chamber, which helps skin rejuvenate, tissue regrow, and especially after skin grafting. So those guys are the experts, and he's in great hands.
Well, we're glad to hear that. Glad you were able to help out on that. Tricia Toyota is in the update desk right now. Tricia, let's go to you.
Linda and Mike, we have some updated information for you. The death toll is now 18 people that we know of, at least half of those people dying in the collapse of that apartment building in Northridge that we've been showing about pretty much throughout most of the morning. And quake experts, of course, are now on the lookout, and they keep telling us to remind ourselves that there are going to be some big aftershocks, some of them in excess of 5 or more. And throughout the San Fernando Valley, lines for food and water are forming at shelters. Water and power, of course, is still out in most places in the valley and many, many places throughout Southern California and Los Angeles. And, of course, as we know, several homes have been damaged severely, some of them falling off their foundations and totally collapsing. Now, we've got some emergency phone numbers for you. Get a pencil and write these down, please. So for the Red Cross, the phone number to call is 213-739-5200. Once again, it's 213-739-5200. That is for the Red Cross. For the Department of Water and Power, the number is 213-481-4523. That is 481-4523 for Department of Water and Power. But I imagine that all of these numbers are going to be very, very busy, assuming that you can even get out on your local telephone. One more number for the gas company. It is 213-244-3030 for Southern California Gas, 213-244-3030. Now, if you've got trouble with the phone, don't worry about it, because everybody's having trouble right now. You are not alone. Pacific Bell says that the quake, of course, is causing problems all over their system. Phone company tells us that the main problems are the slow dial tone, if you can even get one, the inability to call across town or to make a long-distance call out of state, and all of the problems, of course, because of this incredible system overload that we are having right now. People, of course, trying to check up on their family, friends, whatever. You know, you have to understand this is going to be very, very slow for perhaps the next 48 hours or even more than that. And the 611 repair line that Pacific Bell uses, of course, has been very busy. I doubt very much that you can even get through to that particular emergency number. The State Office of Emergency Services is telling us that they know of at least 70 structure fires that are now burning here in Los Angeles, at least 70, and perhaps more than that. 3 hospitals have been severely damaged, and you're looking at a house fire, it looks like, here in Granada Hills. From Air 2. Mark Dunn, are you there?
Trish, we just came over here from the area we were showing you earlier over there at Zelza and Balboa. We're trying to determine what is on fire here. We can see something smoldering in the courtyard that seems to look like an apartment complex. This is just this would just be south of the 118, as a matter of fact. To take a look at that damage on the 118 and to reiterate again the power of this earthquake that we experienced this morning. This literally took this section of the 118 right down over here, collapsed it, and this is, of course, part of the reason why this whole freeway system, at least at this end of the valley, is closed.
Yeah, it looks incredible, and we know that the 118 in the San Fernando Valley, north of the valley there, that is now closed, completely shut down from the 210 all the way to the 405, because that's a huge stretch of highway that a lot of folks used in getting to work and that kind of thing. Now, earlier we have reported that all of the reservoirs do seem to be okay around Southern California. We have reported that the California Aqueduct, which is of course a major through route for water that is coming out of state, either from the Colorado River and through other parts of the country, had not been damaged. And you can see there on our seismocam another small aftershock that we are experiencing here, that the California Aqueduct has sustained some damage. And out in the San Fernando Valley, which is the site of this earthquake, there is some damage out there to the aqueduct, and I would assume that as inspectors get out and get around a little bit more, they're going to be able to assess better what exactly we have going. And that also an oil pipeline has ruptured, and oil is now flowing into the Santa Clara River from the Valencia pipeline. So that's going to create all kinds of problems for our water source. Bob Tur, you're aboard Chopper 2, please.
This is Bob Turr and Chopper 2. What you're looking at is another house that lost the rear portion off Mulholland Highway here just above Beverly Hills, Bel Air area. And there you can see the entire rear portion of the structure collapse, and that would account, what would account for that is the hillside actually slipping. Now, to show you better where we are, that's Beverly Hills down in this haze and smoke. And over to the left would be the Sherman Oaks area, and we're right in the center on this ridge line. And there you can see probably about a 40 by 50 square foot area. The awning and the rear portion of the house has collapsed, probably because part of the hillside right here gave way, moved a little bit south, and took part of the house with it and separated. Now, I can see some people standing out there. It looks like they're going through what's left of their home. Unfortunately, this home is not inhabitable. It's got one of those $1 million views and about 30-cent foundations right now. You can just see the terrible destruction. Now, let's go right turn. I want to show you I think it was a $4.5 million home and how well it fared. It's directly below us. We'll be making a left turn. And there you can see this home. You can see the chimneys fell down, the roof separated. Look over here. Let me give you a little more light here. That's too much. Okay, there we go. You can see that the chimney collapsed. A lot of it's collapsing down into the pool. And then over on this side, it looks like not a whole lot of damage, but look at the tile work and roadway. That portion gave way. And you can just see how much damage was done right here at this structure. There you can see the roof where it's separated, chimneys collapsing. And this is a $4.5 million house. And you can see it didn't fare much better than some of the less priced homes in this area. The foundations up here are, you're basically up on a dirt hill with a concrete foundation. But when that quake hit, you can just see the magnificent, tremendous power that wrought this area, causing this kind of damage. There you can see the home with the roof, and then this home. Down this way over toward Marlon Brando's house, Jack Nicholson's house, some of the celebrity homes in the area, they look like they did fare pretty well. Most
all right, we're losing
a little bit of, sorry about that, just a little bit of damage to the some of the outbuildings.
All right, Bob, thank you very much for that bird's eye view, that aerial tour of some of the damaged areas there on the west side. Just to repeat, at 4:31 this morning, there was an earthquake of 6.6 magnitude centered in the San Fernando Valley under Northridge. Since that time, there have been over...
Victim of a freeway collapse. We just received these in. Rescuers are trying to help out. We'll try to focus in a little bit and you'll be able to see.
And there are situations like this throughout Southern California. It's up around Northridge that there's so much damage. An apartment building up there that we're now understanding more than 10 people died in. They're combing through that apartment building as we speak. But this is some footage. This is literally raw footage that's just being fed into us. We're not sure of the location. Someplace in Southern California. These are pictures that were just taken, and we're literally showing them to you as they become available to us. We just slammed them into an editing machine, and you're seeing what we're seeing for the first time.
And as difficult as it is to watch this, we must tell you that the death toll has now risen to 22. This person is lucky. Hopefully this person will be able to get out and get to a hospital. The hospital situation is really difficult. 2 hospitals in the San Fernando Valley where the problem is acute, the most acute, have been closed and cannot take patients. Other hospitals are overloaded.
Hey, take the figure 8. Take the figure 8.
This is, go ahead.
Sorry, Harry. With us is Kimberly Hart. She's a psychotherapist. She's an expert on post-traumatic stress. She's from Los Angeles. And Kimberly Hart, you had just gotten back, actually, from Florida, working with victims of Hurricane Andrew. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And now, can you tell us, it has to be so difficult because people, in fact, were woken up in the dead of night.
Yes.
By this earthquake.
The people who I've talked to in Los Angeles tell me that it felt different for them than other quakes. Usually a quake, for those of us who live in that area, feels like almost like being on a rowboat. This one was like being hit up alongside the head. It just snatched you. And that type of trauma to your body causes immediate biochemical response in your brain. And so as all these chemicals are being pumped through your body, what you're doing is you don't react the way you normally would. And,
Go ahead.
And later on what happens is you begin to beat up on yourself because you didn't do things the right way. Now 7.5, 8 hours later, you have a better chance to take a deep breath and take a look at now what can you do.
Just to clarify where these pictures are coming from, it's in Sherman Oaks, California. That is in the San Fernando Valley. It's on Beverly Ridge Drive. I believe earlier the Channel 2 helicopter had shown us some pictures of this particular collapse, this house collapse on Beverly Ridge Drive. Continuing now with Kimberly Hart. A lot of people in Southern California, even when I lived there, I can tell you that we didn't take earthquakes that seriously. We kind of laughed about it and said, well, the big one will come, but oh, it'll be fine.
That's right. It's not unlike what happened in the Miami-Dade County area. No one was really prepared for that hurricane. No one in Los Angeles is really ever prepared for this type of immense disaster that happens. And so what we need to do now is give as much information we can as quickly as we can so people can now do what they perhaps should have done before.
And what are you saying?
What I'm saying is psychologically what people need to do is to get themselves safe and take care of all the things, turn off your gas, turn off all your electricity except for your refrigerator, all the things that we've already broadcast today. But what also is very important is that so many people will not feel safe in their home. They need to gather in their communities and talk about what's happening. Perhaps the best psychological thing people can do at this point is to begin to share, to talk about how awful it was, not to keep it inside and say, well, I should be able to handle with this.
Or to say, I'm just going to move.
That's right, or to say, I'm just going to move. We know that in Dade County, we lost 27% of the population permanently. People in Los Angeles, I'm a resident, don't tend to move out quite that easily.
I'm curious, looking at Southern California, this is a place that has been devastated now by brush fires,
yes.
The riots in LA just a couple of years ago. We're talking a place that was once sort of the land of golden opportunity for all of America. People there traveled from across the country to move and live out their dreams.
Yes.
High unemployment now, tough times in real estate markets. Big depression sort of there to begin with anyway.
Yes.
This is sort of insult to injury.
Very much insult to injury. What is so sad about this particular circumstance is that in disasters, the last thing we take a look at is how are we going to help people recover psychologically. We have insurance companies, or hopefully we do, to cover our homes and our businesses, but the psychological after effect is not considered much in this country. There are not a lot of us trained. However, California is lucky. Some of the best experts in the country are from California.
And how long do these after effects last?
We don't know at this time, but certainly easily 1, 2, 3 years. Certainly, I just left Hurricane Andrew. People are still reeling from the effects. People don't understand that it's not just rebuilding your home. Your home might take a year, 2 years to rebuild. Insurance companies may or may not pay off, but what do you do about every time it rains? What do you do, and you think another hurricane's coming? What do you do in these aftershocks? What's happening is people still will feel helpless as these aftershocks continue, and what we know, they will continue for a long period of time. So just like the cumulative effect on buildings, there's a cumulative effect on people.
All right, thank you. Kimberly Hart, we'll get back to you a little more later, and our coverage will continue in just a moment.
This is CBS.
There's a voice in your head that's getting way too much of your attention.
I ate too much again. I'm so fat.
It's stealing your energy.
When I lose the weight,
your hopes.
When I lose the weight,
your life.
When I lose the weight.
But if you're very still and you listen, you'll hear another voice saying ever so patiently, I deserve so much more than this. Imagine that voice speaking your dreams over and over again, and imagine your body living them. The new Jenny Craig. Call 1-800-94-JENNY.
There's a new time to watch American Journal here on Channel 10, a new time to see the stories worth watching every day. I'm Nancy Glass. Watch American Journal now a half hour earlier at 7 o'clock, right here on Channel 10. Join us.
Back in the snow again. How long and how much? Stay with Channel 10.
This is a Channel 10 News special weather report.
Good afternoon. I'm Ken Matz, live in the Channel 10 newsroom with continuing coverage of that storm that's outside your door. We have a live picture of what things look like right now in Warminster. This is Route 132. There are salting operations underway right now, but all of the roads in Bucks County are described as ice-covered and, in a word, horrendous. Other traffic trouble spots to watch out for. 295 south into Cherry Hill. It's described as a parking lot because of a multiple vehicle accident there. And Route 1 from Route 3 all the way up to Lancaster Avenue. Said to be ice-covered, not salted yet, and very, very slow. Exercise caution if you must go out this afternoon. Thank goodness it is a holiday, the rush hour not as bad as it might be. Meteorologist John Bolaris is standing by now with the latest on this winter storm. John?
All right, Ken, horrendous travel at this hour. We're looking at the rain line, the rain changing, the sleet and freezing rain changing over to just plain rain. Look at that, 47 degrees in Atlantic City at this hour with just pure rain. No problems down the shore. You cross that line. Millville's still temperatures in the mid-40s. Wildwood with rain mid-40s. But you jump that line right through central Jersey there and then up towards Philadelphia. It's still all ice, sleet, and freezing rain. Temperatures right now in the city, 31 degrees. Even if we get above the freezing mark as this line approaches, the road surfaces still will be below the freezing mark, meaning the rain that falls will continue to freeze up through the evening rush. It will be horrendous, and as you move north and west, boy, already about 4 to 6 inches of snow on the ground there. They have sleet and freezing rain. That will be the story throughout the nighttime hours, up until about 10, 11, 12 o'clock tonight there. No change over, just sleet and freezing rain. Poconos, you're getting all snow. Snow in the Poconos, you're going to pick up around a foot of snow. For us in the city, we have ice storm warnings in effect. Those roadways, many of the roadways, especially the side roadways, just sheer ice, Ken. We'll keep you posted throughout the afternoon and, again, of course, on the 5 and 6 o'clock broadcast.
Thanks very much. Again, some of the same areas that were hit by the last ice storm may experience power outages. We suggest you be prepared for that. That is the latest. Oh, you're seeing one more shot of Warminster right there, Route 132, where, again, the police and the ice patrols are out in full force, but it is extremely tough going. So we urge extra caution out there. And we'll have full coverage of this storm, of course, on Channel 10 News at 5, 6, and 11 o'clock tonight. We now return you to continuing coverage of the L.A. earthquake live on CBS.
6.7. Only one person was killed. The previous one, I think that everyone remembers very well, was in San Francisco, of course, during the World Series. That was in 1989. 63 people were killed. That was a 7.1. Back in the 80s, in 87, there was the Whittier earthquake. That was a 5.9, killed 8 people. The one that all of us have been referring to today again and again was the one in Sylmar in 1971, because it was centered right about the same location as this one in the San Fernando Valley. It measured about the same, 6.5, and it killed 65 people. These are pictures from that Sylmar earthquake in 1971. It was a devastating earthquake, killing 65 people. At that time, even, there was millions of dollars worth of damage, and you can well imagine with the multi-million-dollar homes today in Southern California that the damage estimates will be much higher. This is the kind of scene that we were just seeing at a community hospital in Los Angeles, in Granada Hills. It was very similar. People being pulled out of buildings and sort of a triage situation in the various parking lots of hospitals. 2 of the hospitals in the San Fernando Valley have been closed. They were unable to provide emergency care. That was just an aftershock that you witnessed. It was a
right here at the apartment complex in Northridge.
That was their seismograph that Channel 2 uses. This is Channel 2 in Los Angeles, our CBS owned and operated station, which we've been counting on to carry some of our coverage, and let's join them now.
We have a handle on what kind of toll the damage has taken here. As I say, we know there are 12 fatalities. There have been at least 20 people have been recovered from this bottom floor, but there's still really no clear statistics on how many people may still be inside. So we don't know how many people are trapped alive down on that first floor. and how many people are dead. They're hoping that the dogs will help them do that. Also now they have stopped doing their verbal search, which is what they were doing this morning. Just going through the complex, yelling out for people and hoping that people would yell back. That would help them identify where the live victims were trapped. Having another aftershock here. And now what they're doing is they're going through the apartment complex and they're using saws. And they're just going through each unit and they're using the saw to open up the floor and look down and see if there are people trapped inside but unable to call back as they have yelled for victims. Once again, the apartment complex you're looking at, what you see is a two-story complex there. If you can look right across the alley, what you will see is this apartment complex, which is identical to the one that is now 2 stories. It is 3 stories. Both of these complexes were 3 stories up until 4:30 this morning. It's actually difficult to even see the damage because it dropped so cleanly on that first floor. The first floor has absolutely disappeared. You can hardly even tell that this was a 3-story structure as of just a few hours ago. Everybody has been evacuated. Obviously, people are now, the people who are in the 3rd-story building are now out. And once again, the quest now is to find out and identify and assess how many people are alive and how many people are dead. One of the things I want to add is covering earthquakes here in Los Angeles the last several years, what I do know is that part of Los Angeles' earthquake preparedness plan was to go through the whole city and identify which structures are dangerous or would be vulnerable in an earthquake of this size or one that would be larger. And this program, I know, was accelerated after the Loma Prieta quake in 1989. The problem with that program, although I was told it was completed, the project was completed in identifying the structures. Of course, the problem was there was no money and no effort, really, to do anything about those structures. People who were in the program told me that they did complete the program. They were able to identify the buildings and the structures, but there was no money and oftentimes really no reinforcement to correct the problems that they identified. Unfortunately, this earthquake came too soon. They were hoping that the project could be completed maybe in the next decade. We've got several people that I say have been pulled out alive. People here who were trapped on the bottom level. In the last couple hours, I have witnessed 3 people who have been brought out alive. They have been taken to several local hospitals. People here who now have heard the reports of this complex collapsing are coming now in from other areas in town. They're bringing pictures with them. They're running up to the rescuers and the fire department and they're saying, look, I know that whatever, my father, my son, he lives here, he's downstairs, please look for him. So the people here now it's becoming where there might have been somewhat of a shock and calm that settled over here earlier this morning. There's a much more panic situation now because no one knows, again, who really is down below on that first level. And with people being brought out alive, there's a great degree of hope. And people now fearing with more time passing that the people they know are trapped inside. There could, of course, be more fatalities. The fire department says that is very possible at this point. But this, again, we've got 12 right now. And they say the operation will continue perhaps through tomorrow. They tell me they're already concerned about nightfall. They're already worried that they're not going to get enough done while there's daylight and that nightfall is going to come way too soon and they're not going to be able to get to the people who may indeed still be trapped on that first floor.
Several hundred people who fled immediately after that earthquake from that damaged building there. Is that who most of those people are behind you? Are they residents who are just drawn to watch this grim scene, this grim search go on?
Well, you know, you've got a lot of people here who live in apartment complexes here who, although their building has not been destroyed, it is damaged enough that they have been evacuated, and so they have to be outside. I mean, the truth is here, I'm sure like many other places in Los Angeles, no one really knows where to go at this point. So you have some people who were actual victims in this complex. You have other people who lived in the complexes across the street who say that they're damaged, although not major, minor, but they don't feel safe inside. A lot of people saying they're too scared to stay inside. And every aftershock is so much more intense because we are so close to the epicenter here that every aftershock is making everybody just shiver and fear.
And also because, of course, the more aftershocks there are, the more damage can occur because this thing just keeps on building up. You know, there are emergency Red Cross centers that are opening up. There are 4 of them so far that we know of. One at Sylmar High School at 13050 Borden Avenue in Sylmar. One at the San Fernando Recreation Center, 200 Park Avenue in San Fernando. One at the Church of Christ, 14655 Sherman Way. That's in Van Nuys. That's the San Fernando Rec Center on Park Avenue in San Fernando, the Church of Christ in Van Nuys. And then the last one is at the Glendale Armory, 100 Colorado Boulevard in Glendale. And those buildings, apparently, because the Red Cross, it took them, I think, a couple of hours to obviously get the okay to open the buildings up for evacuees, people who've lost their homes or perhaps looking for family and friends, to actually set those centers up because they wanted to make sure that those buildings themselves were okay, that they had been okayed by building and safety inspectors who are obviously, being inundated with requests. And, look at this, Mike. It looks just like some sort of a design. At every couple of seconds, there's something else going on there.
Yeah, every few minutes there is an aftershock coming along. Right now, Bob Turr is up over a fire in Van Nuys. Let's check in with Bob and see what's burning there. Bob?
Well, another fire just to the west area of Van Nuys Airport in the area of Reseda. We have a home that's caught fire. We understand a gas line severed here. Very common problem, especially with our aftershocks. Give you a wide shot of the area. Everything looks fine in the neighborhood except this one home. Zoom back on in. Fire department personnel are on scene. They've already got hand lines in there. They've ventilated the home. And right now, look, you can see some people helping out with some civilians helping out with hose lines. These fire department units normally show up with much more equipment. But as you can imagine, all the equipment is so stretched out. Civilians are helping out, and that's the great volunteer spirit that we've been seeing time and time again during this terrible tragedy. This home is burning just to the area, about 2 miles.
That's
or so.
KCBS coverage, our station in Los Angeles. We will leave them now for a moment, and we will continue our coverage of the earthquake that hit Southern California early today. We'll be back in a moment.
Want the inside story on me, George Brett? With minor arthritis pain like mine, I need Ultra Strength Bengay. It's the only one with 3 pain relievers. And besides, doctors recommend Bengay the most. Ultra Strength Bengay, nothing stronger.
You make me feel so young.
Promise Ultra, the first fat-free margarine, just 5 calories a serving.
You make me feel so young.
Fat-free Promise Ultra. Get heart smart.
Hey, gang, catch this! There's a new kind of taste, a new kind of flavor, a new kind of orange. You just gotta savor. Carefree, risk-free, struggle-free, regularity. It's new, orange flavored daylight. Huh? Daily fiber therapy.
Fiber?
Fiber? Fiber?
Introducing the clean, crisp taste of, that's right, fiber. From the makers of Maalox. If only all fiber tasted this good.
You're late. You want to call home. But something about that phone tells you using your card could be a problem. Are you going to get blocked? Are you going to get overcharged?
I think not.
Now there's a new way to get through. Just dial 1-800-CALL-ATT. It makes any card work from any phone, anytime. Try it now and save 20%.
Your true voice.
When the Quake hammers dropped by unexpectedly, it was beef and pasta primavera. For the first ever straight A report card, it was stir-fried beef fajitas. And for the upset victory in the bowling league tourney, it was bistro steak subs. Of course, it's not that you need a special occasion to appreciate dinners like these. All you really need is half an hour, and your average Wednesday will do just fine. Beef, it's what's for dinner.
Good afternoon. If you're just joining us, an earthquake has hit Southern California, mainly in the San Fernando Valley area. At 4:31 a.m. Pacific time this morning, it registered 6.6 on the Richter scale. Heavy damage, 22 dead, serious injuries everywhere. This is someone's kitchen. If you can imagine, the structures, many houses were able to withstand the earthquake, but inside, someone said it was as if their home had been ransacked. And this is a perfect example. Just everything off the shelves, out of the drawers, and onto the floor. We have seen so many instances of that, but that is hardly the worst. Freeways have collapsed, intersections have collapsed, and aftershocks continue to hit the residents there, and it is a very fearful situation. Bill Lagatuda is in Los Angeles. Bill?
We just had a real good aftershock, Connie.
And as you mentioned, that's part of what keeps people jittery after a big earthquake like this. Aftershocks are a common after effect of an earthquake. In fact, we've had hundreds of them, including several rather large ones, over 4.0 on the Richter scale. I dare say that was one of the bigger ones that we just felt. The chance of an aftershock as great or nearly as great as the earthquake itself diminishes rapidly over time. There's about a 10% chance right now that we'll have another earthquake as big as the one we did this morning. And over the next 48 hours, that the percentage drops off dramatically. So as more time passes, the safer it gets here. You're looking at the freeway system over Sylmar, which is in the northern part of the San Fernando Valley, and in the center of your screen is Highway 14, which runs east and west, and that's an overpass that crosses Interstate 5, which runs north and south. Now, I-5, which is known as the Golden State Freeway, is the main north-south link in California. And when that earthquake rumbled through this morning, the portion of Interstate 14 came crashing off the pedestals and down onto the freeway below. One person was killed, a police officer who got to the scene shortly after, perhaps in the dark, ran off the edge, and he was killed in an attempt to try and rescue others who were in the area. We talked about aftershocks. You're looking at what one looks like on the seismograph, and they've been rattling through the area with some regularity every few minutes or so. It's hard to predict how big this one is. Only the scientists can accurately read these seismographs. But I can tell you we've had some fairly large ones in the past few minutes. Again, this is a picture of the Sylmar area, the San Fernando Valley, and there is some smoke rising from some of the fires that continue to burn at this hour. They've told us that 70 or so buildings in the Los Angeles area are still on fire, largely due to ruptured gas mains, which can ignite, which can be very dangerous. Gas can build up in homes, and that's why the fires continue to get started and burn this long after the earthquake. They tell us here one of the main precautions to take when an earthquake hits is to turn off the gas, especially if you hear something, if you hear the gas or smell it, and then get out of the house. A lot of people do that automatically. Sometimes you can't help the reaction that happens. The spark sets off a fire. At a trailer park out in this area, 40 homes were destroyed. Many businesses have been damaged in the San Fernando Valley. The closer from the epicenter you get, the greater the damage has been. Again, this is a look at the freeway that collapsed out in Sylmar. That's I-14 collapsing on Interstate 5. The good news in all of this is that had that happened at rush hour and on a day that was not a holiday, you can only imagine the death toll and what that would have been. There have been 2 other freeways in our area that have been significantly damaged, including Interstate 10 and the 118, which is the Simi Valley Freeway. This is going to throw LA's freeway system into a state of chaos, I would dare say, tomorrow. You know, we're not famous for having the smoothest running traffic system in the world, that's for sure, and this is only going to make it worse. It just so happens that the 3 points that buckled on our freeway system are 3 of the most traveled routes in and out of Los Angeles. It's not going to be good news for months ahead as for those of us who commute into and out of this city on a daily basis.
Bill, don't you think that it probably helped all the schools and everyone prepares in many ways for the earthquake? In other words, they go through drills at people's private homes. They decide what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. We heard a woman earlier say that her children knew exactly what they were supposed to do. That had to have helped some people.
Well, it always does help, and people who've lived here for any length of time do know the routine, and it's something that becomes fairly automatic. Get under a door jamb or under a heavy table, stay away from the windows, don't go outside if you're in a tall building and stand right next to it. We know those common sense things. Unfortunately, we tend to forget them when time passes after an earthquake. And as I said earlier, many homes here do not have earthquake insurance. People just don't seem to want to take the initiative or spend the money for it. And many people don't necessarily take the precautions that they should. I went to my emergency kit, for example, this morning, I'm sorry to say, reached in, got the flashlight out of it, and realized that the batteries were dead. So it's something that we take for granted, and we don't seem to pay as much attention to it as we should.
All right, Bill Lagatuda in Los Angeles. Let us go now to Harry Smith of CBS This Morning, who's with Dr. Chris Scholes. He's a seismologist with Columbia University. Harry?
Yeah, we're right across the studio from you, Connie, and we've got a big map behind us of Los Angeles. Dr. Scholes, we're going to ask you, as we have been asking you all day, to give us a kind of a tutorial first on earthquakes. Show us where, this of course is metropolitan Los Angeles here, all of this yellow area. Show us where the San Andreas Fault is first. That's the fault we hear about so much.
Well, the San Andreas Fault can be recognized as this major geomorphic feature that bounds the transverse ranges, these mountains here, with the desert to the north. That's the master fault in this region. That's the one where we expect the really great earthquakes to occur. Now, down in this whole region is a region which is under compression in this direction. This fault slips this way, but this is all under compression. And so the 1971 earthquake, which we heard a lot about earlier, broke underneath the San Gabriel Mountains at this end of the San Fernando Valley.
This was the 71 quake in which more than 60 people died.
Right. The earthquake today occurred over on this part of the San Fernando Valley on what is probably a low-angle thrust fault, again part of this whole system. It's all mechanically connected system, which slipped right under this region, and about a region this large slipped at about 5 miles underneath the surface.
So 5 miles underneath the ground right here, and what was heretofore an unknown...
Well, we've known the existence of these faults, but because we can indirectly see them in oil wells and so forth along the edge where there's been deep holes drilled. So we know of their existence, but we know very little more about them.
Mm-hmm. And we're losing your microphone, so why don't you just turn around this way and you can talk to me and we can share one here. Talk to us a little bit about what actually transpired. We're talking about a heretofore sort of semi-known fault area, 6.6 on the Richter scale, and describe to us, if you will, what actually happened about 5 miles beneath the surface.
This would be a fault that's almost horizontal, and so the upper part is sliding to the north over geologic time. Mm-hmm. But of course it only does this at times of earthquakes, and it suddenly jumps. And a region something like 12 miles in diameter on this horizontal fault suddenly jumped forward 2 or 3 feet. And it did that in about 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. So it radiates a lot of energy away. That energy gets trapped in the valley, bounces back and forth, so it shakes people for much longer time, maybe 30, 40 seconds, as we heard people report.
Because we talked to people early this morning, and they said they felt like it lasted 30 seconds, 40 seconds, as long as a minute. And for Los Angeles, they say that's rather unusual.
Well, it would be, because it's right underneath, remember, and so if you're on top, this thing is propagating by underneath you, so you're feeling the whole length of the thing propagating. And then, as I said, the waves bounce back and forth in the valley a few times.
And what's the biggest danger right now?
Well, the biggest danger right now is from larger aftershocks that could occur at any time, because that could re-damage structures that have already been damaged and cause more landslides on hillsides that were already made unstable by the main shock.
All right, we've got 22 known dead so far in this earthquake, 6.6 on the Richter scale. It occurred at about 4:31 this morning in Los Angeles. There will be full coverage of all of this on your local news, and of course later on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather and Connie Chung. And look for a CBS News special report at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on your CBS television station.
This is CBS.
Nothing fits. I am never eating again.
There's a voice in your head that's getting way too much of your attention.
I ate too much again. I'm so fat.
It's stealing your energy.
When I lose the weight,
your hopes.
when I lose the weight,
your life.
when I lose the weight.
But if you're very still and you listen, you'll hear another voice saying ever so patiently, I deserve so much more than this. Imagine that voice speaking your dreams over and over again, and imagine your body living them. The new Jenny Craig. Call 1-800-94-JENNY.
There's a new time to watch American Journal here on Channel 10, a new time to see the stories worth watching every day. I'm Nancy Glass. Watch American Journal now a half hour earlier at 7 o'clock, right here on Channel 10. Join us.
Ride free, breathe easy. Channel 10 of the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission invite you to find out more about Transit Check. Call 1-800-872-7261. Save on your commuter trips. Channel 10 and you, partners in a caring community.
And CBS News correspondents on the scene in Los Angeles. At least 22 deaths are blamed on the pre-dawn quake. The heaviest toll, at least 12 dead in the collapse of an apartment building in Northridge at the San Fernando Valley epicenter. Hundreds of people were hurt. The quake hit about 8.5 hours ago, measuring 6.6 on the Richter scale. Water mains were cut, power knocked out, freeways made impassable, and natural gas fires have destroyed dozens of homes. There are late reports of arrests for looting, and more than 1,000 National Guardsmen have been mobilized. Now, these were earlier reports of looting, and we had not seen any evidence of this until now. This is a late report that there have been some arrests for looting. The power is out for 500,000 people, although the power has been restored in many parts of Los Angeles. These are the worst scenes that we've seen today. Harry, you know, as we have said a little earlier, many parts of Los Angeles have not been affected by the earthquake, or have been affected much less than these worst scenes that we continue to show everyone.
But it is interesting also that this earthquake seemed to pick a couple of very specific and very critical areas for transportation. Those highways that you saw down there, one was the Santa Monica Freeway, and we're talking about one of the very busiest highways in the country. They are going to have real havoc to deal with in the days to come as Los Angeles gets back on its feet and resumes something like a normal life. This was the scene much earlier this morning as flash natural gas fires erupted throughout the Los Angeles area. This was one that we saw a good half dozen or 8 hours ago or so. A natural gas main burst underneath a highway. It ignited, flames erupted, and it literally incinerated about a half dozen homes right in the immediate vicinity. Some neighborhoods were struck with not only natural gas main breaks and fires, but then water main breaks as well, which made trying to control the situation very difficult, very difficult at best.
We witnessed one drama here on CBS. A man, a 59-year-old man, his first name is John, we don't know his last name, had woken up in the middle of the night when the earthquake hit at 4:31 a.m. Pacific time. A propane tank exploded in his home. He was burned in the lower part of his body very seriously. He was at a community hospital in Granada Hills and needed transportation. The hospital desperately appealed for transportation to a Sherman Oaks burn center, and our local station helicopter provided that helicopter. This is tape of it now. He actually was able to talk to the helicopter pilot and tell him exactly what happened, and was actually quite lucid, which was amazing. He was transported to the Sherman Oaks burn unit. We have not found out what his condition is, but apparently he didn't inhale any of those gaseous fumes, and he seemed to be in good shape.
Amazing.